Tonight, beneath a sky bruised purple by dusk and the first shy stars, a lone knight rides a road he never wished to take, guarding a woman the kingdom calls a witch, and fearing she may be its final hope. Chains do not bind her, yet the weight of suspicion travels with them both, heavier than armor, quieter than prayer. If this story finds you as the night settles in, whether you're listening in the late evening in the US, drifting toward midnight somewhere in Europe, easing into sleep in Canada, or greeting the small hours in another corner of the world, take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment. Tell us where you're watching from and what time the clock says beside your bed. Your presence here is part of the hush that makes these stories possible. Now, make yourself comfortable, lower the lights, let your breathing slow, as if the road itself is smoothing beneath your feet. Leave the day where it belongs and step softly into the glow of a tale meant to carry you toward rest. The hooves fade, the wind listens, and the story begins. The knight rode at an unhurried pace, as though the horse beneath him understood the hour and the weight of silence it carried. Moonlight pooled along the rutted road, catching on the edges of frost that clung to fallen leaves like small pale mirrors. Each breath from the horse rose in a gentle cloud, then vanished, leaving the night untouched. The knight's armor had been dulled on purpose. Polished steel was too loud, too proud for this journey. Tonight required quiet. He was called Sir Aldrich, though the name felt distant now, a title folded away like a banner after a long war. His cloak, the color of old pine needles, brushed the saddle with a soft, steady whisper. Beneath it, his heart kept a measured rhythm, not hurried, not afraid, only attentive. Knights were trained for noise and fury, for trumpet calls and the clamor of shields. Escorting a single woman along a sleeping road was a different kind of duty, one that asked for listening more than strength. She walked beside the horse, her steps even, her breath calm. No shackles marked her wrists, no hood hid her face. The king's decree had been clear: guard her, do not bind her. The word, which had followed her like a shadow all the same, stretched long by rumor and fear. Yet as Aldrich watched her from the corner of his eye, he saw only a traveler wrapped in a grey wool cloak, its hem darkened by dew. Strands of her hair, silvered not by age but by moonlight, slipped free and caught the air. The night held a scent of damp earth and distant smoke, as if hearths were sighing themselves to sleep across the hills. Somewhere far off, an owl called once, then waited. Aldrich felt the call settle into him, a reminder that the world did not need his permission to keep turning. He loosened his grip on the reins, letting the horse choose the smoothest line. Trust, he thought, was sometimes a matter of allowing. They passed a milestone carved with an old crest, its edges softened by time. Aldrich remembered learning those symbols as a boy, tracing them with a finger, while a patient tutor spoke of borders and oaths. Borders had shifted since then. Oaths too. The kingdom was tired now, its fields thinned by poor harvests, its rivers troubled by an illness no healer could name. That was why she walked here, under the same moon, toward a place few dared to visit. "Is it far?" she asked quietly. Her voice surprised him, not sharp, not secretive, but warm, like a cup held between both hands. He answered without looking down, "By dawn, we'll see the abbey lights." She nodded, as if she had already known. The road continued to unspool ahead of them, patient and pale, while the knight leaned closer, listening. Aldrich felt a soft loosening in his chest, a sense that this journey, begun in fear, might unfold into something gentler than expected. The horse stepped on, the woman walked on, and the moon kept watch, silent, round, and kind. The road narrowed as they left the open fields behind, easing into a corridor of trees that arched overhead like the ribs of a great, sleeping creature. Branches knit together above them, and the moonlight filtered through in broken ribbons, dappling the ground with shifting silver shapes. The horse slowed on its own, hooves finding careful purchase among roots that rose and fell like gentle waves. Sir Eldrick listened to the forest breathe. There was the soft tick of cooling bark, the whisper of leaves turning in their dreams, the distant rush of a stream hidden somewhere to the east. These were old sounds, older than armor and crowns, and they settled his thoughts the way prayer once had. He let his shoulders ease, allowing the night to carry some of the weight he'd been holding since sunset. The woman, her name, he realized, had not been given to him, kept pace with quiet assurance. Her boots made little sound, as if she knew where to place her feet without needing to look. When a low branch leaned across the path, she lifted her hand to guide it aside, careful not to snap the twig. Aldrich noticed this kindness, small and unannounced, and it lingered with him. "You don't fear the woods," he said, not as a challenge, but as an observation. She smiled faintly, eyes reflecting a fragment of moon. "The woods have never harmed me," she replied. "People, sometimes, but not the trees." Her words drifted between them, unclaimed. Aldrich felt no urge to argue. He had seen men do far more damage than storms. He had seen villages burned in the name of safety, fields trampled for the sake of order. The forest, by contrast, simply was patient, rooted, alive. They reached a shallow brook where water slid over stones with a sound like whispered glass. Aldrich dismounted, boots pressing into the cool mud. He steadied the horse and offered his arm. The woman accepted without hesitation, her sleeve brushing his gauntlet. The touch was light, grounding. Together they crossed, the water tugging gently at their ankles before letting them pass. On the far bank, Aldrich paused to listen again. Somewhere deeper in the trees, something moved, a deer perhaps, or a fox beginning its night's work. Nothing threatened. The world seemed to approve of their presence, or at least to allow it. As they resumed their journey, Aldrich felt a subtle shift within himself, like a knot loosening. Escort or not, night or not, he was walking beside another soul beneath the same sky. The labels mattered less here, softened by shadow and leaf and flowing water. The path curved onward, and the forest opened just enough to show a slice of stars ahead, steady and calm. The trees gradually thinned, as though the forest itself were easing them back into the open, and the air changed with it, cooler, clearer, touched by the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers hidden in the grass. The road widened again, its surface smoothed by countless travelers whose worries had long since faded into dust. Aldrich mounted the horse once more, settling into the saddle with a familiar, careful grace. Above them, the sky opened wide. Stars gathered in quiet clusters, their light steady and unhurried, as if time moved differently at such heights. Aldrich found himself counting his breaths with the horse's steps, inhale, exhale, for hooves repeated, till the rhythm became a gentle lullaby. It had been years since he had allowed himself this kind of stillness. The woman walked a little closer to the horse now, close enough that he could hear the soft cadence of her breathing. There was something comforting in the shared pace, as if the road had drawn an invisible line and invited them both to follow it together. From time to time, her cloak brushed the stirrup, a quiet reminder that he was not alone in this night. "You've traveled this way before," she said, her voice low, shaped not to disturb the dark. "Yes," Aldrich replied. "Long ago, when the abbey was still busy with pilgrims." "Is it still holy?" she asked. He considered the question. "I think holiness lingers," he said at last, "even when the people leave." She nodded, seeming satisfied. "Then it may listen." The road rose gently, carrying them toward higher ground. With each step, the land revealed more of itself, rolling hills sleeping under starlight, hedgerows traced in silver, the distant silhouette of a windmill standing like a patient sentinel. Aldrich felt the quiet beauty press softly against his thoughts, easing the sharp edges left by years of vigilance. A cool breeze moved through, stirring the horse's mane and lifting the woman's hair. She paused for a moment, eyes closed, as if greeting the wind like an old friend. Aldrich waited without speaking, allowing the pause to exist. When she opened her eyes again, there was a calm resolve there, steady as the stars above. They walked on, the night deepening around them. Somewhere behind, the world they knew, its fears, its whispers, its judgments, seemed to grow smaller with every step forward. Ahead lay the abbey, the unknown, and the quiet promise of something that might yet be mended. The road continued, unbroken and kind, carrying them gently toward dawn. A faint bell sounded in the distance, so soft it might have been imagined a single note, lingering in the air like a breath held and slowly released. Aldrich reined the horse to a stop and listened. The sound came again, steadier this time, drifting across the hills with a calm insistence. The abbey, he realized, was closer than he had thought. They resumed at an even slower pace, as if drawn forward by the bell's quiet gravity. The land here sloped gently downward, and the road became a pale ribbon leading into a shallow valley. Mist gathered low to the ground, curling around their ankles and the horses' fetlocks, cool and damp, smelling faintly of stone and water. Each step sent ripples through the fog, which closed again behind them without complaint. The woman's presence seemed to change the mist, or perhaps Aldrich's attention had sharpened. Where she walked, the fog thinned slightly, as though making room. He told himself it was only the breeze, the subtle shifts of the land, but he did not look away. He simply noticed, and let the noticing be enough. "Do they know why you're coming?" he asked, the question rising gently, without accusation. "Some do," she answered. "Some only know they were told to wait." Aldrich nodded. Waiting was something he understood well. Soldiers waited for orders. Farmers waited for rain. Kingdoms waited for relief. The bell rang again, nearer now, and the sound wrapped itself around his thoughts, smoothing them. Stone shapes emerged from the mist, first a low wall, then a tower, its roof dark against the stars. A small light burned in a narrow window, unwavering. The abbey stood as it always had, modest, patient, built not to impress but to endure. Aldrich felt a familiar tightening in his chest ease, as if a long-held breath were finally allowed to go. At the gate, he dismounted once more. The iron latch was cool beneath his fingers, beaded with moisture. Before he lifted it, he paused, glancing toward the woman. She met his gaze calmly, her expression open, unafraid. In that moment, Aldrich sensed that whatever she carried within her, knowledge, hope, or something deeper, it was not meant to be forced. He lifted the latch, the gate opened with a gentle sigh, and the path beyond curved inward, lit by small lanterns that glowed like earthbound stars. Warmth seemed to spill out to meet them, subtle but real. They stepped inside together, leaving the road and its questions behind, at least for now. The bell fell silent, as if satisfied, and the night settled into a deeper hush. Inside the abbey walls, the air felt different still, cool, yet softened by the faint scent of beeswax and old stone warmed by countless days of quiet devotion. The lanterns along the path hummed softly, their flames steady and untroubled by the mist, which lingered outside the gate as if it knew it was not invited further. Each step carried them deeper into a calm that seemed carefully tended. The horse followed obediently, head low, as though it too sensed the peace here. Aldrich led it by the reins, boots whispering over gravel that had been swept smooth by patient hands. Somewhere nearby, water trickled into a basin, the sound slow and reassuring, like time measured drop by drop. A wooden door opened ahead, and an elderly monk emerged. His robe, the color of weathered parchment. He carried a lantern of his own, though its light was hardly needed among the others. His eyes were clear and kind, reflecting both flame and star. "You are expected," the monk said simply, inclining his head. The woman returned the gesture with equal ease. "Thank you for waiting." The monk's gaze lingered on her for a moment, not with fear, but with careful attention, before he turned to Aldrich. "The night may rest as well. All who arrive this hour are guests." The word guests settled gently on Aldrich's shoulders, easing a burden he had not known how to set down. He followed as the monk led them toward a small courtyard. At its center stood an ancient tree, its branches bare but strong, roots lifting the stone around them as if claiming space to breathe. Lantern-light traced the bark's deep lines, each one a quiet memory. The woman paused beside the tree, placing her palm against it. Aldrich watched, struck by the tenderness of the gesture. The tree did not move, of course, but the silence around them seemed to listen more closely. "This place remembers," she said softly. "Yes," the monk replied. "That is why we keep it." They were shown to separate chambers, simple and clean. Aldrich removed his armor piece by piece, setting each aside with care. Without the weight of steel, he felt lighter, almost unmoored. He washed his hands at a small basin, the water cool and clear, and sat on the narrow bed, listening to the abbey settle around him, footsteps fading, doors closing, the low murmur of a distant chant drifting through stone corridors. For the first time in many nights, his thoughts did not race ahead to what might come. Instead, they rested in the present, in the steady glow of a lantern, and the knowledge that for now, the road had ended. Outside his door, the night kept watch. Within the abbey, something quiet and patient was preparing to begin. Aldrich woke before the bell, roused by a sense of stillness so complete it felt like a held breath. The chamber was dim, lit only by a thin seam of moonlight slipping through the narrow window. Stone walls held the cool of the night, and the air carried a calm that wrapped around him like a familiar cloak. For a moment, he lay still, listening to his own breathing, slow and even. From somewhere deep within the abbey came a low, melodic murmur, monks at their early prayers, voices rising and falling together like a tide that knew exactly when to turn. The sound moved through the corridors, softened by stone, and Aldrich felt it settle into his bones. He had heard many prayers in his life, shouted before battle or whispered beside the dying. These were different and hurried, trusting, meant to last. He dressed quietly, fastening his cloak, but leaving his armor behind. The weight of it felt unnecessary here. When he stepped into the corridor, lanterns burned low, their flames trimmed for the hour. Shadows stretched long and gentle along the walls, pointing the way like patient guides. In the courtyard, the ancient tree stood silvered by moonlight, its branches etched against the sky. The woman was already there, seated at its base, her back resting against the bark. She looked up as Aldrich approached, her expression peaceful, as though she had been listening to the same quiet call. "You didn't sleep," he said softly. "I rested," she replied. "There's a difference." Aldrich nodded, understanding more than the words suggested. He joined her in the courtyard. The stone cooled beneath him. Above them, the stars were beginning to thin, making room for the first pale hint of dawn. The night was loosening its grip, but without haste or regret. "What will happen today?" he asked. She considered the question, fingertips tracing a slow pattern in the dust. "They will listen," she said. "That is all I ask." Aldrich felt a steady resolve settle within him, not sharp or forceful, but firm. Whatever the kingdom had named her, whatever fears clung to her steps, he would see this duty through, not as a guard alone, but as a witness. The prayer song faded, and silence returned full, unbroken. Somewhere, a bell prepared to ring, its pause as meaningful as its sound. Aldrich breathed in, the air cool and clean, and waited with her beneath the ancient tree. The bell rang at last, a gentle cascade of notes that drifted across the courtyard and slipped through open arches and doorways. It did not startle the morning. It welcomed it. As the final tone faded, the sky softened from deep blue to pearl, and a thin wash of light brushed the abbey stones, revealing their pale textures and quiet strength. Monks moved through the corridors in pairs and threes, their footsteps light, their murmured greetings warm. No one hurried. The day seemed to unfold of its own accord, each moment placed carefully after the last. Aldrich stood and offered his hand to the woman, who rose smoothly, as though the stone itself had lent her support. They were led into a long hall where tall windows faced the east. Dawn gathered there, pooling on the floor in slow golden shapes. Wooden benches lined the walls, polished by generations of patient hands. At the far end, a simple table stood beneath a carved arch, its surface bare save for a single candle, unlit. The abbot entered quietly, his presence calm and steady. His hair was white, his movements unadorned. When he spoke, his voice was low and even, carrying icily without effort. "We listened first," he said, looking from the woman to Aldrich and back again. "Words reveal themselves best when they are not chaste." The woman inclined her head. She stepped forward, hands relaxed at her sides, and waited. The silence stretched not empty, but attentive. Aldrich felt it like a shared breath held by everyone in the hall. When she began to speak, her voice was soft, yet it reached every corner. She spoke of the rivers, how they had changed their courses, of the fields, how the soil had thinned not from neglect, but from imbalance. She spoke of a sickness that was not a curse, but a forgetting of older ways of tending, of listening to seasons rather than commanding them. As she spoke, Aldrich noticed the monks' faces. There was no fear there, no anger, only recognition, slow and thoughtful, like a door opening inward. The words did not demand belief. They invited remembrance. The candle was lit, its flame steady. Morning light strengthened, and the hall seemed to breathe with it. Aldrich felt a quiet warmth in his chest, a sense that something long closed was gently being unlatched. When she finished, no one spoke at once. The silence returned, deeper than before, holding the weight of what had been shared. Outside, a bird called, bright and brief, as if marking the moment. The abbot bowed his head. "We will consider," he said simply, "and we will act." The day had begun. The hall slowly emptied, the monks drifting away like leaves carried on a mild current, each step unhurried, each face thoughtful. The candle continued to burn at the table's edge, its small flame steady against the growing light of morning. Aldrich remained where he was for a moment, letting the quiet settle again, smoothing the impressions left by the woman's words. Outside, the abbey stirred awake. Doors opened to courtyards and gardens, and the soft sounds of daily life returned. Water drawn from a well, bread being broken, a broom sweeping stone in patient arcs. The woman stepped out into the sunlight, pausing as warmth touched her face. Dawn revealed new colors in her cloak, threads of blue and green woven subtly through the gray, like hints of sky and leaf. Aldrich joined her near the garden wall. Beyond it, rows of winter herbs stood resilient, their leaves edged with dew. The air smelled of soil and promise. For the first time since taking this duty, Aldrich felt something uncoil within him, not certainty, but trust. "They listened," he said. "They always do," she replied. Eventually, they walked along the garden paths, where bees already moved among early blossoms, their quiet work undisturbed by human concerns. The woman knelt to touch the soil, crumbling it gently between her fingers. Aldrich watched, noticing how the earth seemed to darken with moisture where her shadow fell, as if remembering something it had once known. A monk approached, carrying a basket of seeds. He paused, watching her hands, then smiled. "We'll begin where you suggested," he said, "by the riverbank." She returned the smile, simple and sincere. "The water will teach you the rest." Aldrich felt the moment lodge itself in his memory, the light, the calm agreement, the sense of work begun not with command, but with care. The kingdom's troubles had not vanished. Fields would still need tending, rivers would still need time, but something had shifted, like a wheel set back onto its proper track. As the sun climbed higher, Aldrich realized his escort was nearly complete. He was still a knight, still sworn to duty, but the shape of that duty had changed. It felt less like guarding a single life and more like standing watch over a fragile hope. The bell rang again, bright and clear, and the day opened wide before them. By mid-morning, the abbey grounds glowed with a gentle industry. Sunlight warmed the stone walls, drawing out their pale hues, and the gardens hummed softly with life. Aldrich found himself seated on a low bench near the ancient tree, watching the steady rhythm of the place, the way tasks were taken up and set down without urgency, like a tide that knew precisely when to turn. The woman moved among the monks with quiet ease, answering questions, listening more than she spoke. When she did speak, it was with careful pauses, as though leaving space for the words to settle where they were needed. Aldrich noticed how people leaned slightly toward her, not out of awe or fear, but the way one leans toward a hearth on a cool day. A bowl of warm broth was pressed into his hands by a young novice, steam curling upward with the scent of herbs and barley. Aldrich thanked him and drank slowly, the warmth spreading through him in a way that armor never could. He realized how long it had been since he had eaten without watching the horizon. From the far side of the courtyard came the sound of laughter, soft, surprised, quickly hushed, as if no one wished to disturb the peace. Aldrich smiled to himself. Laughter, he knew, was often the first sign of healing, even when no one dared name it yet. The woman returned to him beneath the tree. She sat nearby, folding her hands in her lap. Her gaze lifted toward the branches above. A breeze stirred, carrying the faint scent of water and green growth from the valley below. "You'll leave soon," she said, not as a question. "Yes," Aldrich answered. "My orders end here." She nodded, accepting this without sorrow. "You carried me safely," she said. "That matters more than you know." Aldrich felt the words settle, solid and kind. He had escorted prisoners before, guarded nobles, protected caravans heavy with coin. This had been different, lighter, and yet more enduring. He looked around the abbey, at the calm labor, the listening walls, the patient tree. For the first time, he understood that some hopes did not need to be defended with steel. The sun climbed a little higher, warming his face. Aldrich breathed in, steady and slow, letting the moment imprint itself gently, like a blessing that asked nothing in return. The hour of departure came quietly, announced not by command but by a natural pause in the day. Aldrich rose from the bench beneath the ancient tree and retrieved his horse, brushing its neck with an easy, familiar motion. The animal stood calm and patient, ears flicking toward the sounds of the courtyard, as if memorizing them. The woman walked with him to the gate. Sunlight spilled across the threshold, bright but not harsh, and the road beyond lay open and untroubled. The mist of the night before had long since lifted, leaving the land clear and breathing. "You won't be alone here," Aldrich said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "No," she agreed, "nor will the kingdom, if it learns to listen." They stood for a moment in shared stillness. Aldrich mounted, settling into the saddle, the leather warm from the sun. He looked down at her, and in that simple exchange, no vows spoken, no promises demanded, he felt the weight of his duty resolve into something lighter, almost grateful. She lifted her hand in farewell, fingers relaxed, a gesture more like a blessing than a goodbye. Aldrich returned it with a nod, then guided the horse forward. Hooves crossed the threshold, stone giving way to earth, and the abbey gate closed behind him with a gentle, final sound. As he rode away, the road felt different beneath him. Not shorter, not easier, but steadier. The hills rolled on, green and patient, and the sky stretched wide above, open to whatever might come next. Aldrich found his thoughts drifting not to battles or commands, but to the rhythm of rivers, the care of soil, and the quiet power of being heard. Behind him, the abbey bell rang once more, clear and calm. Ahead, the kingdom waited not for a miracle, perhaps, but for the slow, careful work of remembering. The horse moved on, and Aldrich let the road carry him, unhurried and awake to the gentle hope unfolding with each step. The road stretched before Aldrich like a ribbon of pale stone and earth, winding gently through hills that rolled toward the horizon. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long, soft shadows across the grass and lending a golden hue to the fields. A faint breeze stirred the tall grasses at the roadside, making them sway and whisper together, as if speaking in a language only the wind could understand. Aldrich guided his horse at a slow, steady pace, letting the rhythm of its hooves match the calm beating of his own heart. The journey, though quieter than battlefields or sieges, had its own way to wait, carried not in armor but in attention, in the careful observation of every leaf, every distant shape, every subtle sound of the land. Farther along the path, a small stream crossed the road, water tumbling over rounded stones with a gentle gurgle. Aldrich dismounted to let the horse drink, the cool water soothing the animal's tongue, and the warmth of the sun softening the shadows around them. He knelt at the edge, letting his own hands touch the running water. It smelled faintly of wet earth and moss, a smell so familiar and grounding that he almost forgot the larger world beyond this moment. When he rose, he noticed movement along the hilltop, a figure cloaked in green, tending to the wildflowers that grew along the slope. Aldrich squinted, uncertain if the light or his mind played tricks. But the figure remained, bending and straightening with a natural grace. There was no danger in the sight, only a gentle reminder that life continued in quiet, patient ways, blooming where it could, growing where it was allowed. Aldrich guided the horse forward, thinking of the abbey, of the woman, and of the small, steady acts that could shift a kingdom's fortune. He realized that courage was not always loud or immediate. Sometimes it was the quiet, enduring attention to what needed care. The road wound on, lined with grasses, hedges, and small stones, each one catching the light and holding it for a brief moment before letting it move along with the day. The woman remained silent beside him, not needing words, simply moving in sync with the rhythm of the journey. Aldrich felt that silence as a companionable presence, a steadying force that lent strength to the slow pace of the road. The world itself seemed to lean in, listening to the soft dialogue of horse, human, and wind. As the sun climbed higher, a distant forest appeared ahead, its dark edges cutting against the gold of the fields. The trees seemed to wait, patient and quiet, ready to absorb the travelers into their shade. Aldrich felt a small tightening in his chest, not fear, but anticipation. The road ahead promised more than mere travel. It promised lessons in patience, in listening, and in noticing the subtle threads that bound the world together. He let the horse move into a gentle trot, the sound of hooves soft on the packed earth, and allowed his mind to settle into the rhythm. Every breath, every motion, every glance at the hills and the sky became part of a larger, slower story, one that was unfolding around him even as he moved through it. The path dipped into a gentle valley, and a light wind carried the faint scent of pine and damp earth, mingling with the warmth of the morning sun. Aldrich inhaled deeply, letting the mixture of scents anchor him in the present, aware that each step forward was a part of something larger, something carefully woven and waiting to be understood. The valley widened as Aldrich and the woman moved forward, the gentle slope giving way to a meadow kissed by sunlight. Wildflowers dotted the grass, colors muted yet vivid in the morning light's soft blues, pale yellows and delicate whites swaying gently as though nodding in rhythm with the horse's steps. The air was alive with the scent of earth and blooms, carrying faint whispers of life that had endured through seasons of drought and storm. Aldrich guided his horse slowly, letting the animal step carefully over patches of soft soil and clusters of tiny stones. Each hooffall seemed to echo lightly in the vast openness, a soft percussion to the quiet symphony of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. He noticed the way the woman's cloak brushed the tops of the grasses, stirring them like the gentle wake of a passing stream, and felt a subtle sense of awe at her careful presence. "Do you think the kingdom will heal?" Aldrich asked quietly, his voice almost swallowed by the meadow's calm. She tilted her head, gazing toward the distant hills where the forest awaited. "It can," she said, "but only if we remember how to listen." Her words hung between them like sunlight in the morning haze. Aldrich felt their weight, not heavy but grounding, a reminder that strength was not always measured in swordplay or command. It could also be measured in patience, in attentiveness, in the willingness to observe and act with care. A small brook crossed their path, trickling over stones with a crystalline murmur. Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse drink first while he knelt at the edge to cup the water. The chill of it seeped through his hands, a pleasant shock that made him feel alive and connected to the land in a way armor never could. The woman knelt beside him briefly, her fingertips brushing the water's surface, sending delicate ripples outward. For a moment, neither spoke, and the quiet seemed to carry them forward as much as the path itself. Above them, clouds moved lazily across the sky, soft and slow, their shadows drifting across the meadow like slow dancers. Aldrich felt the steady pulse of the world, the rhythm of wind and water, sun and soil. Every sound, every shimmer of light, every subtle movement felt like part of a story unfolding at its own careful pace, one that he was only beginning to understand. Rising, he offered his hand to the woman, who accepted it without hesitation. Together, they returned to the path, the horse following obediently behind. The meadow stretched on, gentle hills rolling into one another, until the forest ahead rose darker, waiting silently at the edge of sunlight and shadow. Aldrich felt the pull of the trees, the unknown they contained, and yet he did not fear it. The day was slow, measured, and patient. With every step, the journey became not merely a passage across land, but a movement into awareness, into understanding the quiet resilience that could shape even a kingdom. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp soil from the forest. Aldrich inhaled deeply, letting the air settle into him. Ahead, the shadowed tree line beckoned, calm and watchful, as if welcoming them into a place older and wiser than any command he had ever followed. The forest loomed closer now, dark and patient, its edges lined with firs and oaks that seemed to lean slightly forward, watching, as if the land itself had a memory of every traveler who had ever passed. Aldrich felt a familiar hush settle over him, a quiet that demanded respect rather than fear. Even the horse slowed, careful with each step, as though it too understood that this place asked for gentleness. The woman walked beside him, cloak brushing against mossy roots and low-hanging branches. Her gaze wandered upward, tracing the intricate patterns of leaves against the dappled sunlight, her eyes reflecting not just light, but thought and awareness that seemed to notice everything at once. Aldrich had escorted many along treacherous paths, but none like this. Here, vigilance was silent. Attention was the armor. A narrow path twisted through the trees, roots curling like small serpents across the soft earth. Birds called briefly from hidden perches, their songs cautious, questioning. Aldrich felt the pull of centuries in the soil, the echo of lives lived and forgotten beneath the canopy. Every footfall stirred faint scents of pine resin, damp leaf, and the cool richness of soil. He breathed deeply, letting the forest mark him with its quiet presence. "You know this forest well," he said softly, more a thought than a question. "I do," she replied. "It listens when words fail." The words settled over him like the slow fall of dusk. He thought of battles, of courts, of kings, and decrees, and realized how little those things truly shaped the quiet pulse of the world. Here, life was measured not in conquest but in care, in attention to subtle shifts, in respect for the enduring. A small stream crossed their path, tumbling over moss-covered stones with a liquid murmur that sounded almost like speech. Aldrich dismounted to guide the horse through, the cool water brushing against its hooves. The woman knelt to trace a finger through the surface, sending tiny ripples outward. She smiled faintly, a serene expression that made him wonder if she heard more than he could. The sunlight dimmed further as they moved deeper, filtered through the thick canopy, turning the forest floor into a quilt of soft greens and browns. Shadows shifted gently with the leaves' movements, and the air seemed to hold a resonance of old stories, quiet truths waiting to be remembered. Aldrich felt the pull of something beyond sight, history, memory, or hope woven into the very roots of the trees. He guided the horse along the path, every step measured, every glance attentive. The woman walked beside him, a steady presence, neither rushed nor hesitant. Together they moved through the forest, carried not just by the road, but by the unfolding rhythm of life itself. Above, light filtered through leaves, casting fleeting patterns on their path. Aldrich let his thoughts drift, soft and unhurried, allowing the forest to teach him its quiet lesson, that strength could be gentle, and guidance could come without force. The trees thickened ahead, their trunks tall and still, guarding secrets in shadow. Aldrich felt anticipation, not fear, or readiness to meet whatever the forest had preserved for travelers willing to listen. The forest deepened around them, branches arching high to form a cathedral of green. Light filtered through in shifting patterns, dappling the ground in soft, ever-changing mosaics of shadow and sun. The air was cooler here, carrying the subtle scent of damp earth, pine, and the faint tang of moss clinging to stones and fallen logs. Each breath Aldrich drew felt alive, mingling with the pulse of the forest itself. The path narrowed, twisting between ancient oaks and firs, whose roots jutted from the ground like the hands of something slumbering. Aldrich guided the horse carefully, feeling the uneven earth beneath its hooves, the small vibrations traveling up through the saddle and into his body. The woman moved beside him, nimble and assured, her steps silent on the leaf-strewn path. A quiet stream trickled nearby, hidden behind a curtain of ferns and reeds, Its water rippled over rocks worn smooth by time, producing a gentle, soothing murmur that threaded through the hush of the forest. Aldrich paused for a moment, letting the sound anchor him. He realized he had not noticed such details in years, not in the midst of battle or the clamor of a court, not when every step carried urgency. Here, attention itself became a form of presence, a gift to the world and to oneself. She glanced at him briefly, a faint smile touching her lips. "The forest remembers those who walk with care," she said softly, her voice almost a part of the ambient hum of leaves and water. "Yes," Aldrich agreed, "and it judges quietly those who do not." Her eyes lifted to the canopy, where shafts of sunlight pierced the foliage in golden threads. "We are all judged, in a way," she murmured. "But the forest offers patience where the world does not." The words lingered, settling over him like the cool shade beneath the trees. Aldrich felt the rhythm of the horse's steps, the rustle of leaves, the murmur of the stream, all threading together into a tapestry of slow, deliberate life. Every sense sharpened not in tension, but in attentiveness, as though the forest itself had invited him to listen more deeply. A fallen log blocked part of the path ahead, its surface moss-covered and damp. Aldrich dismounted to guide the horse over, lifting the reins carefully. The woman stepped over beside him, steady and precise. For a moment they paused, standing together in the quiet, the sun striking through the trees to light their faces in fleeting warmth. Further ahead, the forest began to slope upward, the path rising gradually toward a ridge. From its crest, Aldrich glimpsed a distant shimmer of light, perhaps a clearing, or the edge of the valley beyond. Hope, he thought, often appears as a subtle gleam, small and fragile, but enough to guide the next step. He remounted, and the horse's hooves pressed gently into the soft earth, carrying them onward. The woman walked beside him, their movements synchronized, not by necessity, but by shared purpose. Every sway of the trees, every whisper of wind, every ripple of sunlight seemed to watch them, as if the forest itself had paused to witness this slow, careful passage. The ridge approached, and with it, the promise of perspective, a chance to see beyond the trees, to glimpse what the world might hold if one moved with patience and care. Aldrich breathed in the cool, scented air, letting it fill him with awareness, resolve, and quiet anticipation. The path began to climb more steeply, winding through the forest like a ribbon of soft earth. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy in narrow beams, catching on the moss and ferns that lined the trail. The smell of pine grew stronger, mixed with the earthy scent of damp soil and decaying leaves, grounding Aldrich in the present with each careful step of the horse. He could feel the subtle shift in the forest's energy. Birds no longer called as frequently. The quiet here was not absence but attentiveness, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, watching the travelers pass. The horse moved steadily, hooves pressing into roots and rocks with careful precision, while Aldrich guided it with a light touch, each movement deliberate, unhurried. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the undergrowth. Her eyes scanned the trees, noting every curve of bark, every sway of branch. Aldrich realized she saw more than he did, details invisible to the ordinary observer, like the slight bend of a fern signaling damp earth ahead, or the quiet murmur of a hidden stream. He felt the weight of her awareness, and it lent him a strange calm, as if the forest's watchfulness had been mirrored in her presence. "You've walked this ridge before," Aldrich said quietly, keeping his voice low so as not to disturb the forest's hush. She nodded, fingers trailing along the horse's mane briefly. "Many times it remembers those who move with care." Aldrich inhaled deeply, tasting the pine and earth, letting the words settle. Memories of crowded courts, roaring fires of war. and shouting men seemed distant now, replaced by this deliberate, measured rhythm of steps and breaths. Here, each moment held weight without demanding urgency. Each motion mattered without the need for triumph. A rustle in the underbrush caught his attention, and a small deer stepped lightly into the path ahead. Its eyes met his for a brief instant, calm and unafraid, before it vanished into the shadow of the trees. Aldrich exhaled slowly, aware that such encounters were gifts, moments to notice and carry forward. The ridge opened into a small clearing. Sunlight spilled across the ground in warm, dappled patterns, illuminating a carpet of wildflowers and moss. From this vantage point, he could see the valley stretching out below, a patchwork of fields and distant forests, mist curling faintly in the low places. The world felt both vast and intimate, as if every detail mattered, every life interconnected. The woman paused at the edge of the clearing, letting her eyes sweep across the valley. "It is good to see it this way," she said softly. "The land remembers." Aldrich nodded. He dismounted and led the horse to a shaded spot, giving it a moment to rest. The morning had been long and slow, each step careful, each breath intentional. But now, standing here with the wind carrying scents of pine and soil, he felt a clarity that was rare in his life, the awareness that small, patient actions, the kind that nurtured, healed, and tended, could carry more weight than the sharpest sword. The forest watched quietly as they rested, shadows shifting gently across their faces. In the distance, the valley seemed to shimmer, a gentle promise that the journey forward, though still uncertain, was part of something enduring and alive. Aldrich exhaled slowly, letting the peace of the moment anchor him, ready to continue when the path called again. The ascent continued gradually, winding upward through denser trees, their trunks thick and silent like sentinels. The sunlight, softened by the leafy canopy, fell in streaks across the moss-covered path, illuminating small insects that shimmered briefly before retreating into shadow. The air was cooler here, scented with damp earth, resin, and the faint, almost sweet perfume of flowering shrubs hidden among the ferns. Aldrich guided the horse carefully, feeling each root and stone beneath its hooves. Every step required attention, patience, and quiet strength and awareness that the forest demanded not force but mindfulness. The woman walked beside him, her movements fluid, almost blending with the rhythm of the woods. She did not speak, but her presence was a steadying force, a calm counterpoint to the subtle tension in Aldrich's shoulders. The sound of a distant stream reached them, soft and persistent, weaving its way through the forest like a silver thread. Aldrich stopped for a moment to listen, the murmur of water grounding him in the present. He let his fingers brush against the horse's mane, then rested them lightly on the reins. The horse's warm breath clouded the cool morning air, mingling with the scent of pine and soil, forming a quiet, intimate world in which only the forest, the woman, and he existed. "You can sense it, can't you?" he asked softly, nodding toward the trees. "The way the forest moves, the way it waits." She glanced at him, her eyes reflecting both light and thought. "Yes," she said. "It is patient. It does not rush, nor does it forget." Her words seemed to carry weight beyond the moment, echoing in the still air around them. Aldrich realized that this journey was less about distance and more about attention, the deliberate act of noticing, of moving carefully, of listening to what the world was telling him. Each rustle, each shaft of sunlight, each subtle shift in the path was part of a larger story he had only begun to understand. A deer crossed ahead, pausing briefly to regard them. Its eyes held a quiet curiosity, unafraid, and Aldrich felt the same calm reflection settle in his chest that he had felt in the abbey, in the fields, In every patient moment of this slow journey, the woman smiled faintly, and together they moved onward, the horse stepping lightly over roots and stones. The path began to level out as they neared the crest of the ridge. From here, the forest opened to a view of the valley below. Morning mist still lingered over the far fields, curling and drifting like smoke from a distant fire. Rivers glimmered faintly, tracing silver threads through the land, while distant trees swayed gently in the soft wind. Aldrich felt the sheer vastness of it, the quiet endurance of the earth, and a sense of something older and wiser than any king or court settled over him. They paused at the ridge, letting the forest and valley meet their senses fully. The wind carried whispers of distant water, faint rustlings of unseen animals, and the lingering aroma of pine and damp soil. Aldrich exhaled slowly, letting the clarity of the moment fill him, steadying his heart for the next steps of the journey. The road ahead was still long, the forest still patient, but here at the crest, he understood more fully what it meant to move with care and awareness. He felt ready to continue, carrying the slow, deliberate rhythm of the forest with him. The ridge offered a quiet moment of reflection, but the journey could not pause indefinitely. Slowly, Aldrich guided the horse down the far side, where the trees thinned, revealing a gentle slope that led toward a distant cluster of stone cottages tucked at the edge of the valley. Smoke curled lazily from their chimneys, thin and silver, and the faint scent of bread baking drifted up on the breeze. It was a small sign of life in the midst of the vast wilderness, simple and unassuming, yet comforting. The woman walked beside him, her gaze sweeping over the valley below. The sunlight had softened into a warm glow, illuminating the fields in muted golds and greens. Here, the world felt open, yet intimate, as though every detail mattered: the curve of a river, the sway of grass, the distant hum of life waking in the cottages. Aldrich felt a gentle stillness settle over him, a quiet joy that came not from conquest or victory, but from witnessing a world that was steady, alive, and waiting. The path narrowed again as they approached a small copse of trees, their branches bending slightly overhead to form a natural archway, moss draped from the limbs like soft curtains, and the scent of damp earth mingled with the faint perfume of wildflowers hidden in the shade. Aldrich guided the horse carefully through, feeling the coolness of shadow against the warmth of sunlight, a subtle reminder of balance in the world around him. A bird flitted across the path, pausing on a branch to regard them with curious eyes before taking off in a sudden rush of wings. Aldrich smiled faintly. Each small moment of life, each subtle movement, each gentle sound felt meaningful here, as if the world was speaking to him quietly, one careful note at a time. "You see how it thrives," the woman said softly, gesturing toward the valley, "even in places we might have thought abandoned." "Yes," Aldrich replied. "It has patience. It waits for those willing to notice." Her words resonated deeply. He realized that the journey had become less about escorting her safely and more about understanding the rhythm of the land itself, the slow, deliberate pulse that carried life forward, even in the face of uncertainty. Each step, each breath, each quiet observation was part of the same delicate story. The path began to descend more steeply, winding around the base of a small hill. Aldrich let the horse pick its way carefully, the leather reins steady in his hands. The woman moved in close, her cloak brushing the tips of grass and wildflowers, her presence a silent assurance that they were moving together, not just through space, but through understanding. Ahead, the cottages grew clearer, their stone walls bathed in the soft glow of morning. Smoke curled from chimneys, carrying the smell of warmth and sustenance. Aldrich exhaled slowly, letting the peace of the scene settle over him. The journey had been long, filled with quiet observation and patient steps, But moments like this reminded him why it mattered to witness, to protect, and to move with care through a world that was alive with subtle beauty. The cottages drew closer, their stone walls smooth and weathered, softened by moss that clung stubbornly to every crevice. Smoke curled from their chimneys in lazy spirals, and the faint aroma of fresh bread and wood smoke filled the air, mingling with the earthy scent of nearby fields. Aldrich guided the horse slowly, careful not to startle the quiet life that moved within this small village. The woman walked beside him, her eyes sweeping over the cottages and the surrounding gardens, taking in the neat rows of herbs, the small patches of vegetables, and the low wooden fences that kept wandering animals at bay. Her fingers brushed a cluster of wildflowers at the roadside, and Aldrich noticed the subtle way the petals seemed to brighten under her touch. She moved with a soft attentiveness, a careful observation that left no detail unnoticed. Children's laughter rang faintly from behind a fence, and Aldrich felt a subtle warmth settle in his chest. The forest and the ridge had been patient teachers, but this village, this small pocket of life, reminded him why patience mattered. Growth, care, and attention could transform even the humblest corners of the world into places of subtle beauty. A villager appeared in the doorway of a cottage, pausing to regard them with quiet curiosity. His eyes lingered on the woman for a moment, noting the calm, deliberate presence she carried. There was no fear, only recognition, a sense that she belonged to this place in a way that transcended titles or fear. Aldrich noted the subtle respect in the man's gaze, a recognition of patience and care rather than authority. They continued along the cobblestone path that wove between the cottages. The horse stepped lightly, hooves ringing softly against the stones, while the woman walked beside him, cloak brushing the edges of the path. Sunlight fell in dappled patterns across the stones, and Aldrich felt the slow, comforting rhythm of life here, a quiet assurance that the world could still nurture, still endure. At the edge of the village, a small bridge crossed a stream, its wooden planks worn smooth by generations of travelers. Aldrich guided the horse onto it carefully, feeling the slight give of the wood beneath him. The woman paused at the bridge, gazing down at the water. Sunlight shimmered across the surface, catching on small ripples and stones beneath, and she allowed her fingers to trail through the faint mist that rose where the current churned gently over the rocks. "They thrive because someone tends them," she said softly, looking up at Aldrich. "Even the smallest act of care matters." Aldrich nodded. He had seen it now in the forest, on the ridge, and here in the village. The world responded to attention, to deliberate steps, to quiet acts that were almost invisible, but never without effect. Even the horse, stepping gently across the bridge, seemed to move in harmony with the calm cadence of life around them. Beyond the bridge, the path narrowed into a soft trail that led along the riverbank. The stream babbled in gentle conversation with the stones, and the air was cooler here, scented faintly with water and pine. Aldrich guided the horse forward, feeling the slow pull of the journey continuing, each step deliberate, each breath anchored in the present. The woman walked beside him, steady and calm, a quiet reminder that patience, attentiveness, and care could shape even the uncertain path ahead. Aldrich felt the world open before him, its subtle lessons weaving into his own understanding with every careful step. The river bank stretched ahead like a quiet ribbon of silver, winding through the valley with a soft, persistent murmur. Sunlight glinted on the surface, fractured by the occasional ripple from hidden stones or the gentle plunge of a small fish beneath. Aldrich guided the horse along the narrow trail, the ground soft and springy beneath its hooves, and he felt the gentle rhythm of the river mirror the beat of his own pulse. The woman walked beside him, her gaze following the river's course. She moved with deliberate care, fingers brushing against the tall grasses and wildflowers that leaned toward the water, as if drawn by its life-giving presence. Aldrich watched her quietly, noting how her awareness seemed to draw the world closer, making him see details he might have overlooked: the curve of a branch, the soft hum of insects rising from the soil, the way the light shifted as it passed through a veil of leaves. They passed a bend where the river widened slightly, forming a small pool bordered by smooth stones. The water here was deeper, darker, and Aldrich dismounted, leading the horse gently down to the edge. The cool splash against the horse's hooves mingled with the earthy scent of riverbank mud and wet stone. The woman knelt at the water's edge, dipping her fingers into the current, sending tiny ripples outward that shimmered in the sunlight. "Rivers remember," she said softly, her voice barely rising above the gentle murmur of water. "They carry what is given to them, but they do not rush. They wait for those who know how to listen." Aldrich considered her words as he traced his own fingers along the water's surface. He could feel the river's patience in the slow movement of the current, the way it curved around obstacles and persisted through every obstacle without force or haste. It reminded him of the forest, of the ridge, and of the patient rhythm of life he had been learning to follow. The horse shifted beneath him, nudging his hand gently, and he smiled, understanding the shared trust between them. Each creature, each element of the land, moved with its own pace, its own quiet wisdom. Aldrich felt the journey's lessons settle deeper into him with every measured step, every careful observation, every moment of silent attention. They continued along the river, the path winding under trees and past small clusters of reeds that whispered with the breeze. Sunlight caught on the water in scattered patterns, dancing gently across the trail. The valley stretched on, distant hills rolling in muted greens and golds, the world alive with subtle movement that demanded notice and care. The woman paused again, glancing toward the far end of the riverbank, where a small, worn wooden dock jutted into the water. She turned to Aldrich, calm and composed. "We will rest there," she said, "and see what the river has to teach." Aldrich nodded, guiding the horse forward with deliberate care. Each step carried them closer, not just to a physical resting place, but to another quiet lesson in patience, observation, and the gentle art of listening to the world around them. The wooden dock appeared ahead, aged and weathered, stretching a few paces into the slow, clear river. Its planks were sun-bleached and softened by years of water and time, yet sturdy enough to bear both horse and rider. Aldrich guided the horse carefully onto it, feeling the gentle give of the wood beneath, each step producing a soft creak that seemed to echo in harmony with the river's quiet murmur. The woman followed on foot, stepping lightly onto the dock and letting her gaze sweep over the water. The river moved with unhurried persistence, reflecting the sky in shifting patterns of blue and silver. Here, the sounds of the valley birds, insects, the soft rush of water combined into a slow, gentle rhythm that filled the senses without overwhelming them. Aldrich felt the tension in his shoulders ease, the weight of his duties settling into the background as the present moment enveloped him. He dismounted fully, patting the horse's neck and letting it graze on the sparse grass at the river's edge. The woman knelt by the water, fingertips tracing the surface, sending tiny ripples outward. Each movement seemed to interact with the river as if it were listening, responding in subtle waves and light. Aldrich knelt beside her, allowing his fingers to brush the water to cool and alive, flowing over smooth stones hidden beneath the surface. "It feels endless," Aldrich said quietly. "The river, I mean. Like it has seen everything and waits patiently for what comes next." She smiled softly. "It has seen much, and it teaches those who are willing to notice. Patience is its first lesson." But there is more if one listens carefully. Aldrich exhaled slowly, letting the weight of her words sink in. He thought of the abbey, of the forested ridge, of the village, and now this river. All of it, the careful tending, the quiet observation, the steady persistence, was a kind of guidance, subtle but powerful. The journey he had undertaken to protect her had become something deeper, a lesson in observing life's rhythms, in finding meaning in the quiet and unseen. Sunlight dappled the dock as a breeze passed, carrying the scent of water, pine, and distant fields. A heron lifted from the riverbank, gliding smoothly above the surface before disappearing into the trees. Aldrich watched it, feeling the grace of its flight mirror the calm he sought within himself. They remained there for some time, listening to the river and the soft rustle of reeds, feeling the slow heartbeat of the valley. Every ripple, every bird call, every whisper of wind seemed to remind them that life continued, patient and persistent, even when unseen. Finally, the woman rose and brushed her hands lightly against her cloak. "We will move on soon," she said, calm and steady. "But remember what the river shows us. Even small currents can shape the land if they persist." Aldrich nodded, understanding the quiet truth. They had traveled far, yet the path was only beginning to reveal its lessons. Rising to his feet, he felt the steady pulse of the river beneath him, carrying them onward toward the next stage of the journey. They left the dock slowly, the horse stepping lightly over the worn planks and back onto the riverbank trail. The path curved gently along the water, bordered by reeds that swayed with the breeze and reflected sunlight in tiny, shimmering patterns. Aldrich felt the rhythm of the river echo in his chest, a steady, patient pulse that seemed to guide each careful step forward. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the grasses at the path's edge. Her eyes scanned the river as if reading its subtle language, the movement of water over stone, the occasional ripple from unseen fish, the shifting reflection of sunlight through the leaves overhead. Aldrich realized that her attentiveness was not just observation, but understanding, a quiet, intuitive knowledge of life's hidden currents. A flock of birds lifted suddenly from the distant trees, wings flashing white in the sunlight before they disappeared across the valley. Aldrich watched them go, sensing the slow continuity of life in every motion. The forest and the river had taught him patience. The flight of the birds reminded him that freedom and grace were part of the same lesson. They approached a small bend where the river narrowed and curved between moss-covered rocks. Water trickled and splashed over the stones, producing a gentle, constant murmur that harmonized with the wind rustling through the overhanging branches. Aldrich dismounted again, letting the horse graze on a small patch of grass near the bank. He knelt, cupping the river in his hands and letting it slip slowly through his fingers. The cool, persistent flow reminded him that time moved forward, carrying both hardship and hope. The woman crouched beside him, touching the water lightly. "Even the smallest gesture matters," she said softly. "The river teaches that persistence, however gentle, shapes the world over time." Aldrich nodded, sensing the truth in her words. He thought of the abbey, the village, the forested ridge, and now this river. Every place had carried its own lesson in patience, attentiveness, and care. Each moment of observation, each small act of connection, seemed to ripple outward, leaving subtle but lasting effects on the world around them. They paused there, listening to the river and the gentle rustle of the valley's life. Sunlight danced on the surface of the water, tiny waves breaking against stones in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Aldrich felt a deep calm settle over him, a sense of being exactly where he needed to be, fully present to the slow unfolding story of the land. After a long moment, the woman rose, brushing her hands lightly against her cloak. "We should continue," she said, her tone calm and measured. "The river will guide us, but we must move with it, not against it." Aldrich helped the horse to its feet and mounted, following her along the narrow trail. Each step carried them forward, not hurried, not anxious, but deliberate in awareness that the journey itself was a lesson, and that patience, care, and observation could carry them farther than any sword or command ever could. The river sang beside them, steady and gentle, as they moved onward into the valley's deeper folds, ready for whatever lay beyond the bend. The river's curve opened to reveal a wider stretch of water, slower and calmer, reflecting the pale afternoon sky like a silver mirror. Aldrich guided the horse along the bank, each careful step sinking slightly into the soft, damp earth, the scent of moss and water filling the air. The gentle murmur of the river mingled with distant birdsong, creating a quiet harmony that wrapped around them like a soft cloak. The woman walked beside him, her eyes tracing the patterns of light on the rippling water. Every subtle movement, the ripple of a stone beneath the surface, the gentle sway of reeds along the bank, the glint of a fish briefly breaking the water, seemed to speak to her. And through her presence, it spoke to Aldrich as well. He had come to understand that her knowledge was not of magic alone, but of careful attention, of listening to the smallest details and letting them guide her. A heron rose from the riverbank ahead, wings wide and graceful, its reflection stretching across the water as it lifted into the air. Aldrich watched it silently, feeling the serene patience of the creature mirror the lessons of the abbey, the forest, and the river. There was a rhythm here, slow and deliberate, a quiet endurance that shaped the world without force. They came upon a small bend where the river forked around a cluster of rocks, forming tiny pools and shallow eddies. Aldrich dismounted again, letting the horse drink while he knelt to trace the surface of the water with his hand. Cool and alive, it slipped through his fingers, carrying with it a sense of continuity and persistence that grounded him. The woman crouched beside him, her gaze focused on the way the water moved over the stones. "Notice how it shapes even the hardest obstacles," she said softly. "It does not force them. It moves steadily, patiently, and in time, even stone yields." Aldrich nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle deeply. He thought of the kingdom beyond this valley, of the struggles that lay ahead, and realized that the same quiet persistence could heal, nurture, and guide even the most stubborn problems. Strength was not always in battle, it was in care, patience, and enduring attention. They paused in silence, listening to the river's soft murmur, feeling the cool breeze along the bank, and watching sunlight scatter across the water's surface. Each moment seemed to stretch deliberately, allowing them to breathe in the world fully, to carry its lessons forward with them. Finally, the woman rose, brushing her hands lightly over her cloak. "We continue," she said calmly. "The river has shown us patience, but we must still move forward, step by careful step." Aldrich remounted, feeling the steady rhythm of the horse beneath him, the river beside them, and the quiet presence of the woman as a guide. The path ahead was uncertain, winding through fields and hills, yet he felt a newfound steadiness, a patience that would carry them safely forward. The river's song lingered, a gentle reminder that the slow, deliberate way was often the strongest path. The river gradually narrowed again as the trail curved upward toward the base of a gentle hill. Sunlight, now tinged with the soft gold of late afternoon, filtered through scattered trees, casting long, dappled shadows across the path. The air carried the mingled scent of grass, damp earth, and distant wildflowers, each breath grounding Aldrich more deeply in the calm rhythm of the journey. The horse moved steadily, hooves sinking slightly into soft soil, each step deliberate and careful. Aldrich guided it with light reins, feeling the subtle give of the path beneath. The woman walked alongside him, her presence quiet but firm, her eyes scanning the land with the attentive patience he had come to trust. Each movement she made seemed attuned to the world around her, an unspoken dialogue with the river, the trees, and the earth beneath their feet. Ahead, the forest thinned, giving way to open meadows dotted with wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. A faint trail of smoke rose from a distant hearth, curling lazily toward the sky. The valley stretched out below, rivers and streams tracing silver lines through fields and forests, and the hills beyond rose in gentle, rolling shapes. Aldrich felt the vastness of it press lightly on his chest, not heavy, but expansive, filled with the quiet promise of life persisting. They paused at the edge of the meadow. The woman crouched to examine a patch of herbs growing near the path, brushing away small leaves to reveal tiny blooms. "These plants," she said softly, "hold knowledge in their roots. The land teaches, if you are willing to listen." Aldrich nodded, letting his hand brush over the soft grass, feeling its texture and warmth. He realized that the journey had become less about escorting her and more about absorbing the lessons she offered: the quiet patience of the earth, the subtle strength of water, the slow, deliberate growth of life, even in hidden corners. A breeze stirred, carrying the distant song of birds and the faint murmur of the river below. The horse shifted, sensing the change in the air, and Aldrich steadied it with gentle reins. Each step forward now felt like part of a larger rhythm, a dance of movement and stillness, attention and reflection. The woman rose, brushing her hands lightly against her cloak. "The hill ahead will give us a view of what lies beyond the valley," she said, calm and measured. "We will see the path that still awaits, and choose carefully how we move forward." Aldrich felt a subtle tightening of anticipation in his chest, not fear, but the awareness that every moment mattered. He mounted, guiding the horse toward the base of the hill, feeling the gentle pull of the incline beneath them. The meadows stretched on either side, alive with the quiet hum of life, and the river's silver thread continued its patient journey through the valley. With each step upward, Aldrich carried the lessons of the river, the forest, and the abbey into the ascent. Patience, care, and quiet vigilance. The enduring strength found not in force, but in attention and respect for the world around them. The hill rose slowly beneath them, steady and deliberate, preparing them for the view and the insights that awaited at its crest. The slope of the hill was gentle but persistent, soft earth giving way under the horse's hooves as Aldrich guided it upward. Sunlight spilled across the meadow in warm, liquid gold, catching on tall grasses and clusters of wildflowers that bent slightly in the breeze. The air carried a faint hum of life bees moving from bloom to bloom, distant birds calling softly, and the rustle of the river below, threading through the valley like a silver ribbon. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tips of the grass, moving with an ease that seemed attuned to every whisper of the land. She paused occasionally, bending to touch a leaf or a blossom, and Aldrich noticed the way her fingers lingered, as if acknowledging a quiet conversation with the world itself. He had long ago learned to observe her attentiveness, and with each pause, he felt the rhythm of the journey settle more deeply into him. Ahead, the forest that had once shadowed the riverbank now lay behind them, the trees thinning and giving way to open land. The village cottages appeared faintly in the distance, smoke curling upward in gentle spirals. Aldrich exhaled slowly, appreciating the continuity of life across the valley, from the quiet abbey, through the forests and meadows, to the human settlements scattered along the river. Each place seemed connected, each detail a thread woven into the larger story of the land. The horse moved steadily, hooves sinking slightly into soft soil. Aldrich felt the incline beneath him, the gentle pull of the hill, and allowed himself to be present to the motion, the subtle sway of the saddle, the warmth of the horse's body beneath him, and the light breeze against his face. There was a rhythm here, a quiet cadence that matched the lessons of patience he had been learning. Move carefully, notice deeply, and allow the journey to shape you as much as you shape it. They reached a small plateau partway up the hill. The river stretched out below, widening in gentle curves, sunlight dancing across its surface. The distant forests and hills framed the valley like a painted canvas, and Aldrich felt a quiet awe at the expanse of it. The woman crouched to touch the grass, fingers brushing the blades lightly, and spoke in a soft tone. "The view will teach us more than maps ever could," she said. "It shows paths, possibilities, and patience, what can be achieved without force, and what endures by steady attention." Aldrich nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. He dismounted, letting the horse graze on the sparse grass of the plateau. The breeze was cooler here, carrying faint scents of river, pine, and distant fields, and every inhalation seemed to anchor him in the present, in the slow, deliberate rhythm of the world around him. They stood side by side, looking over the valley. Tiny details emerged from the distance, the faint shimmer of sunlight on the river, the subtle movement of people in the village, the sway of grasses and trees in the wind. Each detail seemed alive, each one a quiet testament to patience and endurance. Aldrich exhaled, feeling the journey's lessons merge into a sense of clarity. Strength was not just in sword or command, it was in the attentiveness to life, in quiet observation, in the steady steps taken toward what truly mattered. The woman rose, brushing her hands over her cloak. "We will continue soon," she said softly, "but take this view with you. It shows the world as it is, and the care it requires." Aldrich nodded, lifting himself back onto the horse. The hill still rose above them, leading toward the crest and a fuller view of the valley beyond. With each careful step upward, he carried the rhythm of the river, the forest, and the meadows with him, ready to let the journey unfold its next quiet lessons. They climbed the final stretch of the hill slowly, each step deliberate, the horse's hooves pressing into the soft earth with quiet determination. The grasses here were taller, brushing Aldrich's legs and swaying in the gentle breeze, carrying the scent of sun-warmed wildflowers and the faint temps of distant pine. The plateau they had paused on faded behind them, replaced by the anticipation of the crest of vantage point that promised a broader view of the valley below. The woman walked beside him, her cloak moving lightly with the wind. She paused occasionally to touch a blade of grass or a flower, her fingers tracing the curves of life, as if seeking guidance from the land itself. Aldrich watched her silently, aware that each gesture was a lesson, each small movement a quiet invitation to notice the subtle rhythms of the world around them. Sunlight fell in long golden streaks through gaps in the thinning trees, illuminating the path ahead. The horse shifted beneath Aldrich, its warm breath misting in the cooler air, and he took a deep, steadying breath. The ascent was more than physical, it was a movement into awareness, a careful attention to the landscape, the light, and the life teeming quietly at every turn. Finally, they reached the crest. The view stretched before them, vast and unfolding, the river snaking lazily through the valley, forests rising and falling in muted greens, and the distant village cottages tiny against the expanse. Mist lingered in the low-lying fields, curling like silk over the earth, and sunlight caught on the river's surface, scattering reflections like shards of glass. Aldrich felt a deep, calm awe settle over him, a sense of perspective both humbling and clarifying. The woman knelt beside a small outcrop of rock at the edge of the crest, letting her hands rest on the sun-warmed surface. "This," she said softly, "is what patience reveals. The world, when seen fully, offers guidance, possibilities, and hope. But only if we take the time to observe carefully." Aldrich dismounted and stood beside her, feeling the wind brush against his face. Each detail, the shimmer of the river, the sway of distant trees, the quiet movement of life, felt alive, deliberate, and interconnected. He realized that the journey had taught him more than mere protection. It had taught him to see, to notice, and to respect the slow, steady forces that shaped the world. The horse grazed quietly nearby, undisturbed by the grandeur of the view. Aldrich watched it, appreciating the calm continuity of life, the patient, persistent rhythm that carried all creatures forward, step by step. The woman's gaze swept across the valley once more, then returned to him, calm and knowing. "We cannot see everything from here," she said, "but we can see what matters most. Remember this view, Aldrich. It will guide the steps you take ahead." He nodded, lifting himself onto the horse with a sense of renewed clarity. The path beyond the hill descended gently into a softer slope, winding toward forests, fields, and unseen roads. With each careful step, Aldrich carried the lessons of the river, the forest, the meadows, and now the crest into the continuation of their journey, a slow, deliberate rhythm of observation, patience, and attentive care. The descent from the hill was gentle, the horse navigating the soft slope with careful, measured steps. Sunlight, now warm and mellow in the late afternoon, stretched across the valley, catching on the river and illuminating the distant forests in a muted glow. Each movement of the horse felt rhythmic, echoing the quiet pulse of the land, and Aldrich let himself sink fully into that rhythm, letting it guide his attention and his breath. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tips of grasses and wildflowers that bent lightly in her wake. Occasionally, she paused to examine a bloom or a small patch of herbs, and Aldrich realized that these moments of stillness were as much a part of the journey as the movement itself. Observing, noticing, and allowing the world responded in subtle ways to such attentiveness. The path narrowed again as they approached a small grove of trees at the base of the hill. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in soft, shifting patterns, illuminating patches of moss and the occasional cluster of wild mushrooms. The air was cooler here, carrying a faint earthy scent mixed with the sweetness of late-blooming flowers. Aldrich exhaled slowly, feeling the calm of the grove settle over him, as though the forest itself acknowledged their passage. A gentle rustle in the underbrush drew his attention. A fox, sleek and cautious, slipped between the trees, pausing briefly to regard them with bright, watchful eyes before disappearing silently. Aldrich smiled at the small encounter, feeling the subtle reminder that life moved quietly, persistently, and often unseen, yet always with purpose. The river below continued its patient flow, catching the golden light and scattering it across the valley. The woman paused near a low-hanging branch, trailing her fingers across the leaves. "The land gives us hints," she said softly. "Not commands, not directions, but suggestions. Listen, and it will guide you." Aldrich nodded, letting her words sink in. The journey had become more than a physical path. It was a series of lessons, each step an exercise in awareness and care. The horse moved steadily, its own rhythm aligning with the natural cadence of the grove, and Aldrich felt the subtle connection between rider, horse, and world around them. As they continued downward, the valley opened further, revealing patches of farmland, small clusters of trees, and faint trails of smoke from distant hearths. The scent of wood smoke mingled with the earthy aroma of the forest, creating a warm, grounding perfume that seemed to whisper of home, rest, and quiet safety. The woman fell silent beside him, her eyes scanning the land with the same quiet attentiveness that Aldrich had come to rely upon. Every detail, the shimmer of sunlight on water, the curve of a distant hill, the soft sway of a meadow, was a note in the slow, deliberate story of the valley. Aldrich felt a gentle calm settle over him, a patient understanding that even the smallest, quietest moments were shaping their journey, preparing them for what lay ahead. The horse reached the bottom of the hill, stepping onto softer ground where the trail leveled out. Aldrich guided it carefully along the riverbank, the water glinting beside them, and felt a sense of readiness for the next stage of the journey. Calm confidence rooted in observation, patience, and the enduring rhythm of the land itself. The trail along the riverbank stretched into a long, gentle corridor, lined on one side by the slow, meandering water and on the other by soft meadows dotted with wildflowers. The afternoon sun slanted low, casting elongated shadows across the path, and the air was filled with a mixture of earthy warmth, the faint sweetness of blooms, and the subtle freshness of flowing water. Aldrich guided the horse carefully, feeling each hoofstep settle into the soft earth, as though the land itself welcomed their passage. The woman walked beside him, cloak rustling softly in the breeze, her eyes tracing the river's movement and the contours of the valley. Every so often, she bent to inspect a flower or brush a leaf aside, her attention attuned to the minutest details of the land. Aldrich realized that her quiet awareness shaped not only how they moved, but how he perceived the world around them. He began to notice the small, almost imperceptible currents in the river, the way sunlight flickered across a stone, and the rhythmic hum of insects rising from the grass. A pair of swans glided across a wider bend in the river, their white feathers luminous in the warm sunlight. Aldrich paused briefly to watch them, the slow grace of their movement reflecting the steady patience he had learned over the past days. Even the horse slowed slightly, as if sensing the stillness that settled over the valley in this quiet, golden hour. "The river teaches more than patience," the woman said softly, her voice blending with the murmur of water. "It shows persistence. Steady, gentle persistence can carve paths even through the hardest stone." Aldrich nodded, letting the thought settle. He had seen this lesson repeated in the forest, the ridge, and the meadow's life, advancing quietly, insistently, shaping the world, not through force, but through careful, constant movement. Even their journey, with its uncertainties and dangers, followed this same subtle principle. The world could be guided gently, deliberately, if one moved with awareness. The path curved around a small thicket of trees, their branches low and heavy with moss. Shadows stretched across the ground, cool and welcoming, contrasting with the warm sunlight just beyond. Aldrich guided the horse through the shaded corridor, letting it pick its way slowly over roots and small stones, while the woman moved beside him with effortless balance, touching the moss lightly as if drawing guidance from the texture of life itself. A distant village came into view, rooftops glinting softly in the slanted light. Smoke rose faintly from chimneys, and the muted sound of human activity voices, the clatter of tools, a dog barking, carried gently on the breeze. Aldrich felt a small wave of comfort wash over him. The valley, though wild and patient, was also alive with human presence, proof of care and persistence in another form. They paused briefly on the path, letting the horse graze and inhaling the mingled scents of river, grass, and hearth smoke. The woman turned her gaze back toward him, calm and steady. "We are nearing the village," she said softly. "Let us continue carefully. Every step still matters." Aldrich nodded, rising in the saddle. Each hoofbeat carried them closer, not hurriedly, but with deliberate attentiveness. The river's steady song continued beside them, a gentle guide, as they prepared to enter the valley's heart, ready to learn the next lesson the journey had in store. The village grew larger as they approached, its stone cottages clustered along the riverbank, their roofs worn by sun and wind but sturdy, sheltering generations of life. Smoke rose from chimneys in lazy spirals, and the faint aroma of baking bread mingled with the earthy scent of the river and surrounding meadows. Aldrich guided the horse slowly along the path, aware of each small sound, the creak of the saddle, the soft brush of hooves on dirt, the distant chatter of villagers carrying on their afternoon routines. The woman walked beside him, moving with the same quiet attentiveness she had maintained throughout their journey. She paused occasionally, her fingers tracing the edges of low stone walls or brushing the petals of flowers growing along the path. Each gesture was subtle, almost meditative, and Aldrich found himself absorbing the rhythm she set, noticing details in the village he might have missed otherwise. The way a child leaned over a fence to watch them pass, the glint of sunlight on a patch of river, the soft flutter of birds taking flight from the rooftops. A group of villagers emerged from a cottage, pausing to glance at them with curiosity tempered by calm recognition. No fear lingered in their eyes, only quiet acknowledgement of travelers moving carefully through their space. Aldrich felt a gentle relief wash over him. In a place shaped by attention and care, respect was returned naturally. The path curved around a small garden, its herbs and vegetables neatly tended, leaves glinting with dew from the morning or water from a well. The woman crouched to examine a cluster of herbs, brushing away soil with her fingertips and inhaling their scent. "Life is strongest where care is constant," she murmured. "Even here, in the humblest corners, attention shapes what endures." Aldrich knelt beside her for a moment, letting the scent of basil and thyme rise into his senses. He realized the lesson extended beyond plants or rivers. It was the quiet persistence of care in every action, every choice, every step. The world responded to those who noticed, who moved with mindfulness and respect, shaping life gently over time. Beyond the garden, the village path widened slightly, leading toward the river where small boats rocked softly at the edge of the water. Children played nearby, their laughter light and fleeting, and the gentle murmur of daily life filled the air, mingling with the soft hum of the river. Aldrich felt the steady pulse of the valley, its life slow and deliberate, yet persistent, reminding him that all journeys, no matter how arduous, were part of a larger, enduring rhythm. The woman stood, brushing her hands lightly over her cloak. "We will pause near the river," she said, calm and deliberate. "Observe and take in what the village holds. There is wisdom in the ordinary, in the rhythm of daily life." Aldrich remounted, letting the horse move slowly forward toward the riverbank. Each step was measured, thoughtful, and filled with quiet awareness. The village's gentle pulse blended with the river's song and the valley's patient rhythm, carrying them toward a moment of reflection and the subtle lessons that awaited at the water's edge. They reached the riverbank where the village boats bobbed gently against the current, the wooden planks worn smooth from years of use. The water shimmered with the afternoon sun, sending fractured reflections dancing across the underside of nearby trees. Aldrich guided the horse to a soft patch of grass at the river's edge, letting it graze while he took a moment to breathe deeply, inhaling the mingled scents of river, pine, and the faint aroma of baked bread drifting from the village. The woman knelt beside the water, her fingers tracing the surface, sending tiny ripples outward. Each ripple reflected the sky, sunlight, and surrounding trees in shifting patterns, as if the river itself was speaking in quiet language. Aldrich watched, noticing the patient concentration in her gaze, the delicate awareness with which she interacted with the world. He realized anew that her lessons were not spoken loudly, they were demonstrated through attentive care, through mindful presence. A small boat rocked lightly at the bank, tied with a frayed rope. A villager appeared briefly, nodding in polite acknowledgement, before retreating into the shadows of the cottages. Life in the village continued steadily, unhurried, yet persistent, a testament to the quiet, enduring rhythm Aldrich had come to respect. "The water teaches patience," the woman murmured, "but also persistence. Notice how it bends around obstacles, yet never ceases its journey." Aldrich cupped his hands, letting the cool river flow over them. The sensation was grounding, a reminder that time, like water, moved slowly but inexorably, shaping even the hardest stone with consistent, gentle attention. He thought of the kingdom beyond this valley, of dangers looming and responsibilities pressing, and felt a subtle clarity. Strength was in persistence, in careful guidance, not merely in force. Sunlight fell softly across the river, illuminating tiny motes of dust and water in the air. The horse shifted beneath him, nuzzling the grass, and Aldrich felt a gentle calm settle through his chest. Every sound, the river's murmur, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children, blended into a slow, soothing rhythm that filled the senses without demanding action. The woman rose, brushing her hands lightly against her cloak. "We will rest here briefly," she said, "but observe everything. Even in the simplest moments, the world speaks its truths." Aldrich nodded, letting the river's song fill his awareness. Each breath, each heartbeat, each quiet interaction with the land and water became part of the slow lesson he carried forward. The valley, the river, the village all held knowledge for those patient enough to notice, and he felt the steady pulse of life shaping him in return. They remained there for some time, seated near the riverbank, absorbing the gentle rhythm of the valley, the steady murmur of the water, and the quiet continuity of human and natural life intertwined. Aldrich understood that the journey's lessons were cumulative. Patience, care, observation, and gentle persistence were as vital as any sword he carried. The late afternoon sun softened to a gentle, golden glow, casting long shadows across the riverbank and bathing the village in warm light. The water flowed steadily, catching every glimmer of sun and reflecting it back in fractured patterns that danced across the surface. Aldrich allowed himself a slow exhale, feeling the tension of the day's journey ease, replaced by a calm awareness of the rhythm around him, the river, the horse, the woman, and the quiet pulse of life in the valley. The woman stood beside him, her eyes sweeping the river and the surrounding fields. She reached down to touch the water again, fingertips tracing delicate ripples that caught the sunlight. "Even the smallest gestures leave an imprint," she said softly. "Everything touches something else. Even here, in a moment of rest, the world responds." Aldrich knelt beside her, dipping his hands into the cool, flowing water. The sensation grounded him, connecting him to the valley, the river, and the life teeming quietly within it. He listened to the soft murmurs of the river, the distant calls of birds returning to roost, and the faint hum of human activity in the village. Every sound, every movement, seemed to blend into a gentle symphony of patience and persistence. A small child appeared at the riverbank, curiosity lighting their eyes. They watched the travelers for a moment, then laughed quietly, running to a parent before disappearing from view. Aldrich felt a quiet warmth spread through him. The simple continuity of life, the small, unnoticed moments, was as powerful as any grand act of courage. The horse shifted beneath him, brushing against the grass, and Aldrich guided it gently to a patch of soft earth, allowing it to rest. The breeze carried scents of damp soil, wildflowers, and distant cooking fires, mingling into a comforting, grounding perfume that seemed to fill the valley itself. The woman stepped back from the river, brushing her hands over her cloak and turning to him. "We rest here for a time, but do not forget what you have seen," she said. "Patience and care are as much our tools as any weapon. Even in the smallest moments, they shape the world around us." Aldrich nodded, feeling the weight and truth of her words. The river, the valley, the village, and every small detail along their journey had taught him more than speed or strength ever could. Life moved in patterns, deliberate and persistent, and understanding those patterns was as vital as any sword or shield. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of amber and rose, they remained at the riverbank, absorbing the quiet lessons of the valley. Aldrich felt the steady pulse of the land and water, a rhythm that seemed to promise endurance, hope, and gentle guidance for the journey yet to come. The sun sank lower, spilling molten gold across the river and bathing the village in a soft, fading light. Shadows stretched across the meadow and riverbank, weaving between the trees and cottages, creating patterns that shifted slowly as the wind moved through the valley. Aldrich felt the cooling air brush against his skin, carrying the subtle scent of damp earth, wildflowers, and the faint smokiness of hearth fires winding down for evening. The woman stood quietly beside him, her gaze tracing the river's meandering path as it wound its way toward the distant hills. Her presence was calm and measured, yet it carried a quiet authority, a reminder that observation and patience were often stronger than haste or force. She knelt briefly to touch the soft grass near the riverbank, letting her fingers linger in its texture, as if acknowledging the world itself. Aldrich watched her, noting how every movement she made seemed deliberate, thoughtful, and in tune with the valley around them. The lessons of the forest, the ridge, and the river coalesced here. Every gentle gesture, every careful step, every attentive pause held meaning. He realized that strength was not always visible, it was the subtle, patient care woven into each action. A family of ducks drifted lazily along the river, their ripples sending tiny waves across the mirrored surface. The soft quacks and the gentle lapping of water against the bank were almost hypnotic, blending with the distant sounds of the village. Aldrich inhaled slowly, letting the calm of the evening settle into his chest, each breath grounding him more deeply in the valley's quiet rhythm. The woman rose and turned to him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Even as the day ends, the world continues to move," she said softly. "Our part is to move with it, noticing, listening, and guiding carefully where we can." Aldrich nodded, feeling a sense of quiet understanding deepen within him. The journey was far from over, yet the evening's stillness reminded him that moments of reflection, patience, and attentiveness were just as vital as action. Each step they had taken together had been a lesson, and the valley, the river, and the village were patient teachers. The horse shifted, nuzzling the grass as Aldrich stroked its neck. A soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying a whisper of coolness and the faint scent of pine. Every element of the valley, the river, the trees, the meadows, and the small human presence seemed to pulse with life in quiet, enduring harmony. The woman's gaze returned to the river, calm and steady. "We will continue at first light," she said. "For now, we rest and carry these lessons with us. Patience and attention are our companions, even when we sleep." Aldrich exhaled, feeling the weight of the day ease from his shoulders. The valley, bathed in the soft glow of evening, seemed to embrace them, offering a quiet moment of peace before the journey resumed. He settled on the riverbank, letting the gentle hum of water and life carry him toward rest, his mind absorbing the calm, deliberate rhythm that would guide him forward. Twilight draped the valley in muted shades of lavender and deepening blue, softening every edge of the landscape into gentle contours. The river, now a dark ribbon edged with fading gold, murmured quietly as it curved through the valley, reflecting the last light of the sun. Aldrich sat on a patch of soft grass, the horse grazing silently beside him, and he let the tranquility of the moment seep into his chest, a quiet warmth spreading with each slow, deliberate breath. The woman moved gracefully along the riverbank, her cloak brushing the grass, the faint rustle blending with the whispers of the evening breeze. She paused to touch the water with her fingertips, sending tiny ripples outward that shimmered in the dimming light. Every movement she made was calm, precise, and patient, as though even the smallest gesture mattered to the world around her. Aldrich observed, sensing once again that her guidance was subtle but powerful lessons learned through attention, not command. A soft call of a nightbird echoed from the trees, and the rustling leaves harmonized with the faint splash of fish breaking the river's surface. The valley's nocturnal rhythm began to stir, gentle and unhurried. Aldrich felt the gradual shift in the air, the subtle cooling, the quiet settling of the land as day surrendered to night. Each sound, each movement seemed deliberate and slow, carrying the same lesson he had felt in forests, meadows, and rivers before. Patience shapes all things, often more than haste ever could. The horse shifted, nudging Aldrich's side gently, as if inviting him to remain present, to notice the calm around them. Aldrich stroked the horse's neck, grounding himself further in the soft evening light, feeling the continuity of life beneath his touch. The woman returned to stand beside him, her eyes scanning the valley one last time before night fully claimed it. "The dark brings its own lessons," she said softly. "Even in shadows, patience and care guide us. Even in uncertainty, the world moves steadily forward." Aldrich nodded, feeling the weight of her words. The journey had carried them through forested ridges, rivers, meadows, and villages, teaching him to observe, to listen, and to move with care. Now, as darkness settled over the valley, he realized the rhythm of the land did not end with daylight. It continued, patient and enduring, a guide for all who would notice. Stars began to appear above, faint at first, then brighter, reflecting in the quiet river below. The village lights twinkled softly in the distance, like echoes of the stars themselves. Aldrich breathed deeply, letting the serenity of the night settle over him, the soft pulse of life in the valley wrapping him in calm awareness. The woman's gaze returned to him, gentle and steady. "Rest now," she whispered. "Take what you have seen into sleep. Let it prepare you for the steps ahead, and remember that patience is always with you." Aldrich leaned back on the grass, the horse resting at his side, the river murmuring softly, and he felt the valley's rhythm seep into his bones. Night enfolded them completely, and for a moment the world felt perfectly still, alive, patient and unhurried, carrying both promise and guidance for the journey yet to come. Night deepened, the sky now a blanket of indigo sprinkled with pale, steady stars. The river whispered beside them, the gentle lapping of water against the bank echoing the slow pulse of the valley itself. Aldrich lay back on the soft grass, the horse settled nearby, and he let the sounds, scents, and rhythms of the land wash over him. The air was cool but not harsh, carrying the faint aroma of damp earth, pine, and distant smoke from the village hearths. The woman remained standing, her silhouette outlined against the pale reflection of the river. She moved quietly along the edge of the bank, her fingers tracing the water's surface. Every ripple she created seemed intentional, yet delicate, as though even the smallest motion held meaning. Aldrich understood that her guidance was never about urgency or force, it was about awareness, care, and presence. The river, the valley, the life within it, all responded to such attentiveness. From the darkened trees along the bank, the soft hoot of an owl punctuated the quiet night. The rustle of nocturnal creatures moving through underbrush blended into the faint whisper of the wind through leaves. Aldrich closed his eyes briefly, letting the slow, steady cadence of these sounds anchor him. He could feel the continuity of life in the valley, moving patiently, persisting quietly through the night. The woman returned to stand beside him, her cloak brushing softly against the grass. "Rest," she said, her voice low, calm, and reassuring. "The night has its lessons too. Observe, even in darkness, patience, persistence, and careful attention guide every living thing, seen and unseen." Aldrich exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of her words sink in. The journey had taught him to watch, to listen, to notice the smallest details, and now he realized those lessons extended into the night. Life moved forward, quietly and deliberately, whether under sunlight or starlight. His role was to move in harmony with it, with care and attentiveness, not force or haste. Stars reflected in the river's surface, glimmering like distant lanterns guiding him. He traced the ripples with his eyes, noticing how the water's surface slowly carried each reflection onward, never rushing, never faltering. Even the smallest movements left a mark, gentle but enduring. The horse shifted beside him, settling more fully into the grass. Aldrich felt a calm connection, not only to the horse, but to the land, the river, the woman, and the quiet continuity of life surrounding them. Night's embrace was gentle but complete, a soft reminder of the steady rhythm underlying every step of their journey. The woman's gaze met his, serene and unwavering. "Sleep now, Aldrich," she whispered. "Let the night guide your rest. When you wake, you will carry its patience and clarity with you for the steps ahead." Aldrich reclined fully against the grass, closing his eyes as the river's murmurs, the whisper of leaves, and the gentle hum of nocturnal life lulled him into calm awareness. The valley held them in its patient rhythm, promising endurance, hope, and subtle guidance for all the journeys yet to come. The night deepened into a velvet stillness, the stars above shimmering faintly through a haze of soft clouds. The river murmured beside them, its gentle flow a constant, soothing presence. Aldrich lay quietly on the grass, feeling the soft, steady pulse of life around him, the faint rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the occasional splash of water as a fish broke the surface. The air was cool and comforting, carrying the earthy scent of riverbank soil and the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers. The woman moved slowly along the bank, her figure a calm shadow against the starlit water. She crouched and let her fingers drift through the river's surface, watching the ripples expand and fade into the dark. Each ripple seemed deliberate, a quiet reminder that even the smallest touch could leave a lasting mark. Aldrich watched, noting how she moved with patience, awareness, and care, as if her presence itself was a gentle guidance for the world around her. From deeper in the trees came the rustle of a small creature moving softly through underbrush, then the faint chirp of crickets rising to fill the night air. The valley breathed around them, alive but unhurried, carrying its own lessons of patience, persistence, and quiet attentiveness. Aldrich let the rhythm settle into him, each breath in tune with the subtle cadence of the night. The horse shifted, nudging Aldrich gently, and he reached down to stroke its neck. Its warmth grounded him further, connecting him to the continuity of life in the valley. The woman's voice rose softly, breaking the quiet just enough to carry a gentle lesson. "Even when darkness falls, Aldrich," she said, "life moves steadily forward. Patience and care do not pause, they continue, quietly shaping the world, unseen but enduring. Aldrich absorbed her words, feeling the truth of them settle deep. The journey, the river, the forests, the meadows, and the villages all had taught him to observe, to listen, and to move with care. Now, under the cloak of night, he understood that these lessons continued even when he could not see every detail. That persistence and attentiveness mattered as much in shadow as in light. The river reflected the stars above in rippling patterns, flickering and shimmering, each small motion creating a gentle dialogue between sky and water. Aldrich traced the movements with his eyes, noticing how even the faintest disturbances carried forward, leaving an imprint in the flow. Everything, he realized, was connected. The smallest ripple, the softest breath of wind, the quietest footsteps, all were part of the valley's enduring rhythm. The woman stood and placed a calm hand on his shoulder. "Rest fully," she said. "Let the night carry your awareness gently, and awaken with the valley's lessons still within you. The path continues, but you are ready for it." Aldrich closed his eyes, letting the river's murmurs and the soft cadence of nocturnal life lull him toward rest. The valley held him in its patient rhythm, the gentle embrace of night guiding his body, mind and spirit toward calm, deliberate sleep, readying him for the journey that awaited with the dawn. The first whispers of dawn crept over the horizon, pale pink and gold brushing the edges of the valley. The river, now lighter and clearer, reflected the awakening sky in delicate, trembling patterns. Aldrich stirred on the soft grass, the horse shifting beside him, its warm breath mingling with the cool morning air. The world was quiet, save for the gentle rush of water, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant crowing of roosters from the village beyond. The woman was already standing, her cloak catching the early light as she surveyed the riverbank. She knelt to touch the water, fingertips tracing circles that rippled outward, reflecting the pale sky. Each movement seemed meditative, deliberate, as though she were attuning herself and, by extension, Aldrich to the subtle currents of the day ahead. Aldrich rose slowly, stretching and feeling the cool dew on the grass beneath him. The valley greeted him with fresh scents, damp earth, wildflowers, and the faint smoky traces of village hearths. He inhaled deeply, letting the calm, measured rhythm of morning seep into him, reminding him of the lessons carried through night: patience, observation, and quiet persistence. Birdsong rose from the trees, delicate and unhurried, each note filling the space between the river's soft murmurs. A heron lifted from the bank, wings wide, gliding gracefully across the water before vanishing among the distant trees. Aldrich watched it, sensing the quiet endurance in its movement, the same slow, deliberate persistence he had learned from the river, the meadows, and the village. The woman straightened and turned to him, her expression serene yet commanding. "The valley wakes slowly," she said softly. "We must move with it. Every step we take today will echo in the patterns we leave behind. Observe, listen, and carry awareness with you." Aldrich nodded, mounting the horse with careful steadiness. The river flowed beside them, constant and patient, guiding their path as it had for countless journeys before. Each step along the riverbank felt measured and intentional, a quiet dance with the rhythms of the land. The village began to stir fully as they moved onwards, smoke rising in lazy spirals, voices calling softly in greeting, animals beginning their daily work. The interplay of human activity and natural life added a gentle vibrancy to the valley, a testament to persistence and care manifesting in both people and land. The woman rode lightly beside him, her presence calm but insistent, a reminder that every detail, no matter how small, mattered. Aldrich felt the lessons of night carry forward into the morning: patience, careful observation, and gentle guidance were tools as vital as any sword, and the valley itself was the quiet teacher. They continued along the river, moving steadily into the soft morning light, carrying the calm rhythm of night and the attentive awareness of the river with them, ready for whatever the day and the journey might bring. The morning sun climbed slowly, casting a warm, honeyed light across the valley. Mist lingered over the river, curling in delicate wisps that reflected the pale gold, softening the outlines of trees and cottages. Aldrich guided the horse along the riverbank, each hoofstep sinking lightly into the damp earth, leaving small, temporary impressions that would be erased by the next ripple or breeze. The valley seemed to breathe with them, a living rhythm of water, wind, and life. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tall grasses, and she paused to inspect a patch of wildflowers bending gently in the breeze. Her fingers traced the curve of petals and leaves, brushing away dew as though acknowledging the life there. "Every living thing follows its own rhythm," she said softly, her voice blending with the hum of the river. "Notice it, and you can move with the world instead of against it." Aldrich watched a small dragonfly skim across the surface of the river, wings flickering in the light. Its movements were precise, deliberate, each touch of water leaving a tiny, fleeting ripple. He felt the quiet lesson in that small creature. Even the briefest motion, when made with awareness, left a mark that rippled outward, however gently. The horse shifted beneath him, ears flicking toward the soft rustle of the trees. Aldrich guided it carefully along the path, feeling the subtle undulations of the riverbank beneath the hooves. Every step felt deliberate, measured, in harmony with the valley's gentle rhythm. The sunlight caught on the river's surface, scattering reflections across the grass and Aldrich's cloak, turning the path into a mosaic of light and shadow. The village lay quietly ahead, smoke rising from chimneys in slow spirals. Villagers moved between cottages and gardens, their work steady and unhurried, a quiet testament to the power of persistence and care. Aldrich felt a sense of ease settle over him. Life continued in small, deliberate motions, and he realized that their journey was part of that same flow, guided by observation, patience, and steady attention. The woman rose fully, brushing her hands over her cloak. "We will pass through the village carefully," she said, her tone calm but firm. "Even ordinary moments hold lessons if we move with awareness. Watch, listen, and notice the subtleties. They will guide the steps to come." Aldrich nodded, carrying the valley's calm rhythm with him as he continued. The river's song, the soft hum of the village, and the quiet attention of the woman beside him blended into a slow, deliberate cadence. Each step forward was not hurried, not anxious, but mindful and connected, shaping the journey with care and gentle persistence. The morning light strengthened, scattering gold across the river and meadows, and Aldrich felt a quiet confidence settle in him. The valley's lessons, patience, attentiveness, and enduring rhythm were firmly embedded in his awareness. With the horse moving steadily beneath him and the woman at his side, he was ready to follow the path wherever it led, moving deliberately with the pulse of the world around them. The path led them closer to the heart of the village, where cottages clustered more tightly and gardens filled with carefully tended herbs and vegetables. The morning light fell softly on the stone walls and thatched roofs, warming them in hues of ochre and amber. The air carried the mingled scent of baking bread, fresh earth, and the subtle sweetness of flowers growing in window boxes. Aldrich guided the horse slowly, aware of every sound, the creak of leather, the soft padding of hoofs, the gentle murmur of villagers beginning their day. The woman walked beside him, her gaze sweeping across the small streets with quiet attentiveness. She paused to touch the edge of a stone wall, feeling the texture, the slight warmth of sun-baked rock. the faint growth of moss clinging in the cracks. "The world leaves traces," she said softly. "Even in the smallest details, patterns emerge. Notice them, and you will see the path more clearly." A child ran past them, laughter bright and unself-conscious, chasing a small wooden cart that rattled softly across the cobblestones. Aldrich smiled, sensing the steady, unhurried rhythm of life here. The village moved with its own quiet cadence, work, care, play, and observation all blending into a continuous, harmonious flow. Each small act contributed to the endurance of the place, a subtle demonstration of the lessons the woman had been teaching him for days. The horse stepped carefully over uneven cobblestones, hooves striking with a soft tap-tap, each step deliberate. Aldrich felt the rhythm of the movement align with the rhythm of the village, the river, and the valley beyond. There was no rush here, no need for force, only steady awareness, careful action, and the quiet patience that shaped everything around them. The woman led them toward a small square, where a well stood at the center, its stone edges worn smooth by countless hands over the years. She gestured toward it, and Aldrich dismounted, allowing the horse to graze nearby. The woman knelt and cupped her hands in the water, letting the cool liquid flow over her palms. "Even ordinary water carries lessons," she said softly. "It sustains life, reflects the world, and moves patiently forward. Notice its flow and learn from it." Aldrich knelt beside her, tracing the surface of the well with his fingers. The water was cool and steady, rippling softly as though breathing, echoing the lessons of river and valley. He felt the subtle hum of life in the village, the footsteps, the laughter, the distant clatter of tools, and realized that every small action, every gentle attention, contributed to the enduring rhythm of the world. The woman rose, her cloak brushing the stone edges of the well. "We will pause here for a short time," she said, "and observe. Even the smallest moments contain guidance. Breathe, notice, and let the village teach you what it can." Aldrich leaned back slightly, letting the calm of the square settle round him. The horse grazed softly, the river murmured in the distance, and the villagers went about their morning quietly, each action deliberate, each moment alive with persistence and care. Here, in the gentle pulse of the village, Aldrich felt the continuity of life, steady, unhurried, and full of subtle lessons that would guide him in the journey yet to come. The village square held a quiet hum of life, gentle and unhurried, as Aldrich and the woman remained near the well. Sunlight filtered through the gaps between cottages, warming the worn stone and highlighting the tiny motes of dust that drifted lazily in the air. The faint scent of herbs from nearby gardens mingled with the soft aroma of baking bread, creating a comforting, earthy fragrance that settled around them like a gentle embrace. The woman crouched once more, this time letting her fingers brush over the stone edge of the well. "Everything endures when attended to with care," she said softly. "Even the smallest gesture of thoughtfulness leaves a mark, shaping the rhythm of life around it." Aldrich absorbed her words, feeling their truth echo in the valley, the river, and the long path they had traveled. Nearby, a villager carefully carried a basket of vegetables across the square. Each step was slow and deliberate, each movement measured, yet there was a grace to the rhythm of their work. Children chased each other along the cobblestones, laughter weaving softly into the ambient melody of the morning. Aldrich realized that life here moved in layers of quiet persistence, with every action, no matter how ordinary, contributing to the enduring balance of the place. The horse shifted beneath him, grazing on the edge of the square, its soft munching a subtle counterpoint to the distant clatter of tools and the occasional coo of a pigeon from the rooftops. Aldrich ran his hand along its mane, feeling the warmth and strength beneath his fingers. Even the animal, steady and reliable, was a part of the ongoing rhythm of care, persistence, and gentle attention that defined this valley. The woman stood, her gaze sweeping across the square. "Observe the interactions," she said quietly. "Notice how care guides them, even in small acts, tending, feeding, helping one another. These patterns are invisible to those who rush, but they sustain life quietly, endlessly." Aldrich followed her eyes, taking in the simple choreography of daily existence. A child offered a wildflower to a parent, who accepted it with a gentle smile. A baker paused to hand bread to a neighbor, while a cat prowled along the edges of the square, alert yet calm. Every movement, every exchange felt deliberate, each one part of a slow, steady current that carried the village forward. The woman turned to him, calm and assured. "We will leave soon, but carry this with you. Even outside this village, the rhythm of careful observation and thoughtful action will guide our path. Strength is not always in force, is in patience, in attentiveness, and in quiet persistence." Aldrich nodded, rising to mount the horse. The village's gentle pulse, the river's steady song, and the lingering warmth of sunlight blended into a soft awareness he carried with him. With the woman at his side, and the valley unfolding beyond, he felt ready to continue their journey. Each step deliberate, each moment infused with the subtle guidance of life observed and respected. They left the square slowly, the horse stepping lightly over the cobblestones as Aldrich guided it toward the road that led out of the village. Sunlight had grown warmer now, spilling over rooftops and fields, casting a golden glow that softened every edge and painted the valley in gentle tones. The air carried the faint aroma of bread baking, mingled with wildflowers and the cool scent of river mist rising from the distance. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tall grasses at the road's edge. Occasionally she paused, kneeling to observe a patch of herbs or a wildflower, letting her fingers trace the delicate curves of petals and leaves. Aldrich felt the rhythm of her attentiveness wash over him, a quiet lesson in awareness and care. The world responded subtly to those who noticed. He realized it moved more clearly, more patiently, when observed with gentle attention. The road led through a narrow corridor of trees, sunlight spilling through gaps in the canopy in shifting patterns. Shadows danced across the ground, blending with the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional flutter of birds taking flight. Aldrich let the horse pick its way carefully over roots and uneven earth, feeling the gentle undulations beneath each hoofstep. The path was simple yet alive, every movement a quiet interaction with the world around them. "The forest has its own guidance," the woman said softly, her voice blending with the gentle whisper of wind through branches. "It moves, listens, and responds. Step with care, and it will show you more than any map could." Aldrich nodded, letting the sound of the wind, the river in the distance, and the quiet life of the village behind them settle into his awareness. Each step forward was deliberate, measured, a slow unfolding of motion that felt in harmony with the valley's enduring rhythm. Even the horse seemed attuned, moving with a steady patience that mirrored the world around them. The path curved gently, revealing glimpses of the river below, shimmering with sunlight and dotted with the occasional glint of a boat or waterfowl. Aldrich inhaled deeply, savoring the mingled sense of earth, water, and grass. Feeling a calm certainty settle within him. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but the valley's lessons, patience, observation, and quiet persistence were now a part of him, guiding each step along the road. The woman paused at a bend in the trail, letting her gaze sweep over the river and the distant hills. "We move forward, yes," she said softly, "but never rush. The land, the water, and the life that inhabits them teach us in their own time. Attend, Notice and carry that rhythm with you. Aldrich adjusted his posture in the saddle, the horse shifting gently beneath him, the sun's warmth on his back, the gentle sway of the horse, and the soft hum of life around him coalesced into a slow, deliberate cadence. With the woman at his side and the valley stretching onward, he felt the quiet pulse of the world guide each step. Every movement measured, patient, and full of subtle, enduring strength. The road began to widen as they moved beyond the village, the trees thinning to reveal rolling fields that stretched toward the distant hills. Morning sunlight spilled across the landscape, golden and warm, illuminating the subtle sway of tall grasses and wildflowers that bent gently in the breeze. Aldrich guided the horse slowly, feeling each hoofstep settle softly into the earth, a rhythmic echo of the valley's steady pulse. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tips of grasses and leaving soft impressions in the soil. She paused often, letting her fingers graze a leaf, a flower, or a stone, as though listening to their quiet whispers. "Every element of this land has a lesson," she said softly. "Even the smallest detail can guide you if you pause to observe." Aldrich noticed the subtle movements around him, a butterfly hovering briefly over a bloom, a lizard darting between sun-warmed stones, and the gentle ripple of a brook feeding into the river. Each small motion seemed deliberate, part of a pattern that required no hurry but demanded attention. The valley was teaching him again, this time through the rhythm of life in open fields, showing that patience and care were not confined to forests or rivers alone. The horse shifted, ears flicking at the soft rustle of wind through the grass. Aldrich ran a hand along its neck, feeling the warmth and the steady pulse beneath his fingers. Even the animal moved in quiet harmony with the land, steps measured and patient, aware of its surroundings, without haste. A distant hawk soared above the hills, circling lazily in the golden sunlight. Aldrich watched its effortless glide, wings spread wide, and felt the subtle lesson of its path. Observation, patience, and careful navigation could carry one far, without need for force or reckless speed. The woman's presence beside him reinforced the same idea, her calm guidance a quiet beacon for every step he took. The road curved gently toward a small grove, where the sunlight dappled through the trees and the air was rich with the earthy scent of moss and pine. Aldrich felt a sense of calm settle over him, each breath aligning with the rhythm of the valley, the horse, and the gentle whisper of the wind. The woman paused at the edge of the grove, turning to him with a serene expression. "We will pass through carefully," she said softly. "Every step is part of the journey, and even here, observation and care will guide you more surely than haste." Aldrich nodded, urging the horse forward slowly. The gentle sway of the grasses, the quiet pulse of the brook, and the soft hum of the grove's life merged into a calm rhythm, carrying him steadily onward. Every movement, every sound, every subtle detail became part of the careful, deliberate cadence that would guide them through the valley and beyond, one patient step at a time. The grove welcomed them with a gentle hush, the sunlight filtering through leaves in soft, shifting patterns that danced across the forest floor. Aldrich guided the horse slowly along a narrow path, the hoofbeats muted by moss and fallen leaves. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of damp earth, pine resin, and the subtle sweetness of wildflowers hidden among the trees. Each breath he took felt grounding, tethering him to the quiet rhythm of the forest. The woman walked beside him, careful not to disturb the delicate undergrowth. She paused to touch a fern, letting her fingers trace its curled fronds, and then glanced at Aldrich with a calm intensity. "Notice how the forest moves even when it seems still," she said softly. "Life persists quietly, patiently, shaping itself without haste." so must we. A soft rustle echoed through the trees, and a small family of rabbits darted from one patch of undergrowth to another, their movements swift but careful. Aldrich watched, captivated by their precise, deliberate motions. Even in flight, there was purpose, a subtle attentiveness that allowed them to navigate the forest safely. He felt a quiet lesson in the rhythm of their step speed. Without awareness was chaos, but careful, mindful movement ensured survival. The horse shifted, brushing against Aldrich's leg, and he ran a hand along its neck, feeling its warm, steady pulse. Its calm presence was a quiet reminder that they were not alone in the rhythm of life here. Every creature, the horse, the rabbits, the birds above, moved with careful awareness, forming an intricate tapestry of patience and persistence. Sunlight broke through a cluster of tall trees, illuminating a patch of moss-covered stone. Tiny motes of dust floated lazily in the beams, catching the light like drifting sparks. Aldrich inhaled slowly, letting the moment sink into him. Even the smallest details of the grove, the texture of bark, the curve of a leaf, the shimmer of light on moss, held lessons if he paused to notice. The woman stopped beside him, her eyes scanning the canopy above. "We walk gently, but we are not idle," she said. "Patience does not mean inaction. Observe, listen, and move with purpose, and the forest will guide you." Aldrich nodded, mounting the horse with careful steadiness. Each step forward along the forest path felt deliberate. Each sound, each sight, and each subtle shift in the air carrying him deeper into the valley's lessons. The gentle rhythm of the grove, the soft hum of life all around, and the presence of the woman beside him merged into a slow, deliberate cadency, quiet, steady pulse to guide him through the day ahead. The path widened gradually as they moved deeper into the grove, sunlight spilling in golden beams that lit patches of moss and the occasional wildflower. The air was filled with the earthy scent of damp soil and the faint sweetness of pine and blooming herbs. Aldrich felt each breath settle gently into him, a slow rhythm that echoed the steady flow of the river they had followed and the quiet pulse of the village they had left behind. The woman walked beside him, pausing occasionally to brush her fingers over the bark of a tree or the soft fronds of a fern. "Every surface, every texture has a story," she said softly. "Even in stillness, life communicates its presence. Notice it, and you will move more wisely." A deer stepped lightly between the trees ahead, cautious yet graceful, its ears twitching at every sound. Aldrich watched, feeling a sense of awe at the precision and patience of the creature. The horse shifted beneath him, ears flicking, attuned to the subtle vibrations of the forest floor. In the quiet interplay of predator and prey, of horse and rider, Aldrich sensed a slow, deliberate harmony that governed all movement in the valley. The sun rose higher, warming the grove and casting shifting shadows that stretched and bent with the leaves' slow sway. Aldrich guided the horse carefully over small roots and stones, each step a measured dialogue with the forest floor. He realized that the lessons of the river, the village, and the valley converged here. Attention, patience, and careful movement shaped every path, whether trodden by foot, hoof, or wings. A gentle rustling in the underbrush revealed a fox moving gracefully through the ferns, pausing to look at them with intelligent, watchful eyes. Aldrich held his breath, noting the careful balance of its movement, calculated, deliberate, and patient. The woman's gaze met his briefly, a faint smile playing across her lips. Even in shadows and uncertainty, she whispered, "Life persists." Guided by awareness and care, they continued along the winding path. The sound of the river, now faint but steady in the distance, a quiet reminder of the continuity of life. Aldrich's awareness expanded to the smallest details, the flicker of sunlight through leaves, the subtle scent of blooming wildflowers, the soft hum of insects rising from the undergrowth. Every detail seemed a note in the valley's slow, patient symphony. The woman paused at a bend where the path opened onto a small clearing. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating a patch of wildflowers bending gently in the breeze. "Here," she said softly, "let the forest teach you stillness. Let your awareness settle, and you will find clarity in every step to come." Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze on the soft grass of the clearing. He inhaled deeply, feeling the valley's rhythm steady, unhurried, persistent settle into him. In the gentle pulse of the grove, the measured cadence of life, he understood anew that every moment, every careful step, and every act of attention carried its own quiet strength. The clearing breathed in a golden warmth, the sunlight filtering through the canopy above, highlighting every curve of moss, leaf, and flower. Aldrich stood quietly, allowing the soft rustle of leaves and the distant song of the river to wash over him. Even the faint hum of insects rising from the grass blended into the gentle symphony of life, a slow, deliberate rhythm that seemed to pulse in harmony with his own heartbeat. The woman moved with her usual calm precision, stepping lightly among the wildflowers and touching a bloom here, brushing the moss there. "Observe," she said softly, her voice almost carried away by the breeze. "Even the smallest details hold guidance. The forest, the river, the earth itself, they teach us patience and attentiveness. If we are willing to notice." A small rabbit paused near the edge of the clearing, ears twitching, before darting back into the underbrush. A bird flitted across the sky, its song brief and delicate, leaving a lingering echo that seemed to blend with the wind. Aldrich realized that every living thing moved with purpose, each action deliberate, yet gentle, a dance of care and persistence that guided the valley through time. The horse shifted beneath him, quiet and patient, grazing softly on the dewy grass. Aldrich ran his fingers along its mane, feeling the steady warmth and strength beneath his touch. He sensed a subtle lesson in its calm presence. Reliability, patience, and quiet endurance were as vital as courage and strength. The woman stepped back to the center of the clearing, raising her gaze to the canopy above. "Even in stillness, there is movement," she whispered. "The forest grows, the river flows, life persists. Awareness is our guide. Step carefully, listen closely, and you will find the path shaped for you." Aldrich closed his eyes briefly, inhaling the earthy sense of the clearing, the subtle sweetness of moss and flowers, the warmth of sun on soil, the crisp freshness of river mist carried on the breeze. Each detail seemed to anchor him, reminding him of the slow, persistent rhythms of the valley that had guided them through forest, village, and riverbank alike. After a long, deliberate pause, he mounted the horse again. The woman walked beside him as they followed the winding path out of the clearing, every step careful, measured, and full of quiet attentiveness. The grove gradually thinned, revealing distant hills and sunlit fields beyond, and Aldrich felt the lessons of the clearing settle firmly in him. Observation, patience, and gentle persistence were as vital as courage in any journey. The morning continued to unfold, warm and golden, carrying the soft pulse of the valley with it. Every sound, the murmur of the distant river, the rustle of trees, the distant calls of animals wove into a slow, soothing cadence that guided them forward, steady, deliberate, and full of enduring strength. The grove gave way to open fields, rolling gently toward the distant hills. Sunlight poured across the landscape, casting long, soft shadows that danced across the undulating grasses. The air was warm now, carrying the mingled scent of earth, wildflowers, and the faint trace of the river they had followed. Aldrich guided the horse slowly, feeling each step in harmony with the rhythm of the valley, each hoofall pressing into the soil as though leaving a temporary imprint on the pulse of the land itself. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tall grasses, her fingers occasionally tracing a blade of grass or the curve of a small flower. "Notice the expanses," she said softly. "Even in open space, patterns persist. Life moves with patience, and so must we. Every step leaves a ripple in the world around you." A hawk circled high above the hills, wings spread wide, gliding effortlessly on unseen currents of wind. Aldrich watched it, fascinated by the effortless precision of its movements. "See how it moves," the woman continued quietly. "No rush, no force, only awareness, patience, and deliberate action. The same can guide us through any challenge." The horse shifted beneath him, grazing slowly, each bite deliberate and measured. Aldrich let his fingers brush along its neck, feeling its steady warmth, the gentle pulse of life beneath his touch. Even the horse's calm presence mirrored the rhythm of the valley, moving in harmony with the wind, the sun, and the land. In the distance, a small brook wound its way through the field, the sun catching on its rippling surface. Aldrich could hear its faint, gentle murmur, a soft song blending with the whisper of wind through the grasses and the occasional chirp of birds. The sound was soothing, like a quiet heartbeat echoing the valley's enduring persistence. The woman paused at the edge of the brook, crouching to touch the water with her fingertips, watching the ripples expand and fade into the current. "Every motion leaves its mark," she said, voice barely above the soft wind. "Even the smallest actions ripple outward. Patience, care, and awareness, they shape the path ahead more than force ever could." Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze freely. He knelt beside the brook, running his hands through the cool water and feeling the soft current flow over his skin. The sensation was grounding, a reminder that life continued, steady and deliberate, whether in the forest, the village, or the open fields. Each ripple, each movement, carried a lesson in patience and gentle persistence. After a long pause, the woman stood, brushing her hands on her cloak. "We move on now," she said softly. "Carry the calm and awareness of this place with you. Step deliberately, observe carefully, and let the world guide you in its own time." Aldrich mounted again, feeling the valley's rhythm settle deep within him. The horse's steps, the gentle murmur of the brook, and the warm sunlight all merged into a slow, steady cadence that carried them forward. Every moment became part of the quiet, deliberate journey, shaping not just the path before them, but the strength and patience within him as well. The fields stretched endlessly before them, rolling like waves in a soft green ocean. Aldrich guided the horse slowly, the hooves sinking lightly into the damp earth, each step measured and deliberate. The sun was higher now, warming the air, scattering a golden sheen across the tall grasses that swayed gently in the breeze. The faint hum of insects rose from the fields, mingling with distant bird calls, creating a soft, natural symphony that carried the pulse of life steadily onward. The woman walked beside him, her eyes sweeping across the horizon, taking in every detail. She paused occasionally to touch a flower, a blade of grass, or a sun-warmed stone, letting her fingers linger as if listening to the world itself. "Even in vast spaces, patterns emerge," she murmured. "Observe, and you will see how every small movement, every interaction, contributes to the rhythm of life." A herd of deer appeared on a distant hill, moving with a quiet grace, their heads lifted as they sensed their surroundings. Aldrich watched, captivated by their steady, deliberate steps, the way they moved with awareness and patience. The horse shifted beneath him, ears flicking toward the soft rustle of the deer, yet remained calm, a steady presence in the harmony of the valley. A gentle stream appeared to their right, winding through the fields like a silver thread. Its waters glimmered in the sunlight, reflecting the sky and the occasional ripple of leaves that fell from nearby trees. Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze while he approached the stream. Kneeling, he dipped his hands into the cool water, feeling it slip between his fingers and flow over smooth stones. The sensation was grounding, a quiet reminder of the steady persistence of life, moving forward no matter how small the motion may seem. The woman stepped beside him, her gaze fixed on the flowing water. "Patience is in the flow," she said softly. "Even the strongest river begins with a single, persistent current. So must our actions be, deliberate, attentive, and steady." Aldrich breathed slowly, letting the rhythm of the stream sink into him. He noticed the subtle vibrations of the land, the soft swaying of grasses, the chirp of insects, the distant rustle of trees, and felt the quiet pulse of the valley embedding itself into his awareness. Every detail, every movement, contributed to a larger, enduring pattern, and understanding it meant moving in harmony with the world, rather than against it. The horse nuzzled his shoulder, warm and patient, reminding him again of the subtle strength in calm endurance. The woman mounted again, her cloak brushing the grass lightly, and Aldrich followed, guiding the horse along the gentle rise of the field toward a distant ridge. The wind carried the soft fragrance of wildflowers and earth, weaving around them in a slow, soothing rhythm that seemed to pulse in time with their footsteps. As they moved forward, Aldrich felt a quiet confidence settle within him. The lessons of the forest, the village, the river, and the clearing had merged into a patient, deliberate understanding of the world around him. Every step, every careful observation, every measured breath contributed to the journey, and he realized that strength and guidance often lay not in force, but in attention, care, and quiet persistence. The ridge ahead rose gently, rolling upward like a soft swell in the endless sea of fields. Aldrich guided the horse with careful steadiness, each hoofall sinking lightly into the warm, sun-baked earth. The wind carried the mingled scents of grass, wildflowers, and the faint hint of the river below. High above, a hawk circled lazily, wings wide, gliding effortlessly in the golden light of the afternoon. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tall grass, fingers occasionally tracing the curve of a leaf or the smooth edge of a stone. "Notice how the land rises and falls," she said softly. "Even in its shifts, it moves with patience. So must we. Every step is a part of the journey, deliberate and deliberate alone." Aldrich's eyes traced the distant river below, shimmering like a silver ribbon as it wound through the valley. The gentle murmur of its waters reached him faintly, blending with the soft rustle of the grasses and the distant hum of life in the villages beyond. Even from this height, the valley pulsed with a steady rhythm, patient and enduring, a constant flow that carried all life forward. The horse shifted beneath him, nudging gently at his side, its warmth grounding him in the moment. Aldrich ran a hand along its mane, feeling the quiet strength and steady pulse beneath his fingers. Even the horse, a creature of strength and endurance, moved with careful attention, reflecting the same patient rhythm that seemed to govern the entire valley. The woman stopped at the crest of the ridge, gazing down at the river below. Sunlight caught on the water's surface, scattering glimmers like tiny stars dancing across its waves. "Even when the path seems steep or uncertain," she said, voice soft but steady, "patience and observation guide you. Force alone cannot carry you safely, but awareness and care will." Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze on the soft grasses that clung to the ridge. He knelt briefly, feeling the earth beneath his hands. the warmth of sun-soaked soil and the gentle caress of the wind. Every detail, the tilt of the land, the shimmer of the river, the movement of birds above seemed imbued with quiet guidance, teaching him to move with deliberation and gentle attention. The woman stepped beside him, her hand brushing lightly against the horse's neck. "We will descend carefully," she said, "but carry the lessons of this ridge with you. The rhythm of the world moves steadily, and those who notice it are guided safely through even the steepest paths." Aldrich mounted again, feeling the pulse of the valley beneath them, the river's soft murmur guiding his awareness, the wind carrying the scents of earth and flowers. Each step down the ridge became a measured, deliberate motion, aligned with the slow, enduring rhythm of the land. The path stretched ahead, winding through fields, forests, and meadows, and he felt the quiet strength of patience and observation steadying him, preparing him for the journey yet to come. The descent from the ridge was gentle but deliberate, the horse picking its way carefully over the uneven ground. Aldrich guided it with soft pressure on the reins, every step measured, attentive, and deliberate. The sunlight poured across the valley below, scattering gold across the fields and catching the edges of distant trees, turning every leaf and blade of grass into a glimmering mosaic of color and light. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tips of wildflowers, her gaze sweeping steadily over the landscape. Occasionally, she paused to touch a stone or trace a fern's delicate frond. "Even the smallest obstacles," she said softly, "require attention. Careful observation ensures our steps leave no harm and follow the path of least resistance." A gentle breeze rose from the valley, carrying the earthy scent of soil, grass, and the distant river. Aldrich inhaled deeply, letting the calm of the ridge settle into him, a slow rhythm syncing with the horse's steady movements. The valley's pulse was quiet but constant, flowing through the trees, the river, and the creatures that moved unseen among the fields. A pair of deer crossed the path ahead, their heads lifting as they sensed the riders, then continuing gracefully into the trees. Aldrich watched their smooth, deliberate movements, feeling the subtle lesson in their cautious patience. Life in the valley moved with awareness, not haste, and every creature, whether human, horse, or wild, was part of the same enduring rhythm. The horse shifted beneath him, nudging gently against his side. Aldrich ran his hand along its neck, grounding himself in its steady warmth and heartbeat. Even the animal carried the valley's quiet lesson. Strength and endurance often lay not in force, but in calm persistence and careful attention. The woman led them toward a shallow brook that traced a meandering path through the lower fields. Sunlight glinted off the water, scattering shimmering patterns onto the surrounding grass. She paused, letting her fingertips skim the surface, sending ripples outward that vanished slowly into the current. "Every step, every gesture leaves an echo," she said softly. "Observe them, respect them, move with their rhythm." Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze near the brook, while he knelt and dipped his hands into the cool water. The current flowed steadily, carrying small pebbles and fallen leaves along with it, a quiet reminder that persistence and patience shape all paths, no matter how small or unseen. He felt the rhythm of the valley here, in the water, the wind, the grasses, and the creatures, settling into him like a slow, calming heartbeat. The woman mounted again, her cloak brushing the sunlit grass, and Aldrich followed. They continued along the gentle path that wound beside the brook, the soft murmur of flowing water blending with the whisper of wind through the trees and the occasional distant bird. Every step, every motion, every breath was deliberate, measured, and attuned to the quiet, enduring pulse of the valley. The brook widened slightly as they followed it, its waters clear and bright, tumbling over smooth stones and reflecting the sunlight in tiny, shimmering flashes. Aldrich guided the horse along the bank, feeling the soft give of the moist earth beneath each step. The gentle murmur of the water intertwined with the distant hum of insects and the faint rustle of trees, creating a soothing, steady rhythm that seemed to pulse in harmony with the valley itself. The woman walked beside him, occasionally letting her fingertips brush the water's surface. Each ripple that spread outward seemed intentional yet effortless, a quiet reminder of how even the smallest actions could influence the world around them. "Observe the flow," she said softly. "Notice its patience, its persistence. The river does not hurry, yet it reaches its destination, shaping the land as it goes." Aldrich watched a dragonfly skim across the water, wings catching sunlight in glimmers of green and blue. It moved with precise, delicate grace, hovering, darting, and settling briefly on a reed before continuing its journey. In its motion, he saw a reflection of the lessons the woman had been teaching him. Even the smallest movements, made with awareness, left a subtle yet lasting mark. The horse shifted, ears flicking as a small flock of birds rose from the nearby reeds. Aldrich ran his hand along its neck, feeling its calm strength beneath him. The animal's steady presence, attuned to the valley and the gentle rhythm of life, reminded him once again that persistence and patience often held more power than force or haste. The sunlight fell in warm beams across the water, highlighting the smooth stones and the delicate sway of grasses along the bank. Aldrich dismounted and knelt by the edge of the brook, letting the cool current slip through his fingers. Tiny fish darted beneath the surface, moving with deliberate care, and he felt the quiet continuity of life surrounding them. The woman stopped beside him, her gaze sweeping over the flowing water. "The path ahead may shift and change," she said softly, "but the rhythm of the world remains steady. Observe it, move with it, and it will guide you safely forward." Aldrich mounted once more, letting the horse pick its way carefully along the bank. The brook's gentle murmur, the warm sunlight, and the soft rustle of the surrounding fields combined into a slow, soothing cadence, guiding every step, every breath, and every motion. The valley's lessons patience, careful observation, and gentle persistence were deeply imprinted within him now, carrying him steadily forward toward the journey that awaited beyond the bend. The path beside the brook began to widen, the tall grasses giving way to gentle slopes, dotted with wildflowers that swayed lazily in the warm breeze. The sunlight had grown stronger, spilling gold across the land and glinting off the water's rippling surface. Aldrich guided the horse slowly, each step deliberate, feeling the gentle pull of the slope beneath the hooves and the soft give of earth underfoot. The woman walked beside him, her eyes sweeping over the fields and the glimmering water. She paused occasionally, touching a blade of grass or brushing her fingers over a sun-warmed stone. Even the broadest expanse, she murmured softly, is composed of countless small details. Observe them, and you will see the subtle patterns that guide the world. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves of a nearby tree, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and the faint tang of river water. Aldrich inhaled deeply, feeling a calm awareness settle into him. The valley spoke in quiet rhythms. The water murmured, the wind whispered, and even the horse's soft steps became part of the valley's persistent, patient song. Ahead, a fox emerged briefly from the underbrush, its fur glinting in the sunlight. It paused, ears flicking, and then moved deliberately toward cover, graceful and aware of every sound and movement. Aldrich watched, noting the precision in its steps, the careful balance of speed and caution. Life moved with purpose here, even in moments of stillness or apparent ease. The horse shifted beneath him, grazing softly at the edge of the path. Aldrich ran his fingers along its mane, feeling the warmth and steady pulse beneath his touch. Even the animal carried the valley's quiet lesson. Strength and persistence were not always loud or forceful. They were calm, attentive, and enduring. The woman led them toward a gentle rise in the fields, where sunlight poured across the grass in golden waves. She stopped for a moment, letting her gaze sweep across the valley below. Even the smallest movements ripple outward, she said softly. Every choice, every observation, shapes the path that follows. Step with care, and the world will guide you. Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze freely. He knelt by the brook, letting the cool water flow over his hands, watching leaves and tiny insects drift along its current. The steady murmur of the stream, the soft rustle of the grass, and the warmth of sunlight all blended into a slow, comforting cadence that seemed to anchor him fully in the present moment. After a long pause, he rose and mounted again, following the woman as they continued along the winding path. Each step forward was deliberate, infused with the quiet lessons of observation, patience, and gentle persistence. The fields stretched before them, bathed in light and sound, carrying the enduring rhythm of life that guided them steadily toward the unknown. The fields began to slope gently upward, the horizon stretching into soft hills that glimmered in the afternoon sunlight. The path beneath the horse's hooves was firm but uneven, and Aldrich guided each step with careful attention, feeling the subtle dips and rises in the earth beneath him. The warm breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass, mingled with the faint, distant temps of the river they had been following for days. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tips of tall grasses. She paused occasionally, touching the edge of a stone or letting her fingers graze a flower petal. "Even when the path rises before you," she said softly, "observe. Each small detail can show the way forward. Awareness is our guide when the steps ahead are uncertain." A distant hawk circled high above the hills, gliding effortlessly in the sunlight. Aldrich watched its flight, noting the calm precision in every movement. "See how it moves," the woman continued quietly. "Patience, observation, and deliberate action carry it safely. So must we. Move attentive, measured, steady." The horse shifted beneath him, ears flicking at the distant rustle of the grass. Aldrich ran a hand along its neck, feeling the warmth and steady pulse beneath his fingers. The animal's calm presence reminded him of the valley's quiet lessons. Strength and endurance were often found in persistence, observation, and care, rather than in force or speed. The path curved toward a grove of ancient trees, their trunks thick and moss-covered, roots curling and intertwining along the ground. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in soft golden streams, casting dappled patterns across the path. Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze, and stepped slowly among the trees. The air was cooler here, tinged with the earthy scent of moss and rich soil. The woman stopped beside a particularly wide tree trunk, letting her hand rest on the rough bark. "Notice how the tree stands," she said softly. "It grows slowly, with care. Its roots anchor it, its branches reach steadily upward. Patience and persistence are its strength, just as they must be ours." Aldrich leaned against the horse, breathing in the rhythm of the grove, the soft murmur of leaves in the breeze, the distant call of birds, the gentle sway of branches overhead. Each sound, each subtle motion, seemed to pulse in harmony with the world around him, grounding him in a slow, deliberate cadence that carried him forward. The woman motioned for him to continue, and he mounted once more. Step by careful step, they moved through the grove, every motion deliberate, every breath attentive. The sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the distant hills in shades of gold and amber, and Aldrich felt the quiet, enduring pulse of the valley, guiding him steadily onward, preparing him for whatever lay ahead in the unfolding journey. The grove gradually thinned, giving way to rolling hills dotted with wildflowers that swayed lazily in the afternoon breeze. The sunlight cast long, warm shadows across the undulating land, painting the fields in soft shades of gold and green. Aldrich guided the horse slowly, each step measured, feeling the subtle shifts of the earth beneath the hooves and the gentle pull of the incline. Every motion felt deliberate, a quiet dialogue with the valley itself. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tips of the grasses, her eyes sweeping across the hills. Occasionally, she paused to touch a stone, a leaf, or a patch of earth, as if listening to the subtle whispers of the land. "Even the hills teach patience," she said softly. "They rise and fall slowly, steadily, without haste. So must we." And with awareness at every step, a small stream appeared to their left, winding lazily through the valleys like a silver ribbon. Its water sparkled in the sunlight, rippling gently over smooth stones. Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze while he knelt beside the stream, letting the cool water slip through his fingers. Tiny insects skimmed the surface, creating small, fleeting ripples, and he felt the quiet continuity of life flowing through even the smallest details. The woman stepped beside him, her gaze drifting to the hills in the distance. "Observe the patterns," she whispered. "See how the water bends around stones, how the grass leans with the wind, how life adapts without forcing. Awareness and patience guide the path more reliably than speed or strength ever could." Aldrich leaned back on his heels, letting the sounds of the stream, the distant call of birds, and the soft rustle of grasses settle into him. Each breath he took felt connected to the rhythm of the valley, the steady, deliberate pulse of life that persisted even in the quietest, smallest motions. The horse shifted beneath him, nudging gently, and Aldrich ran his hand along its neck, feeling the warmth and steady pulse. Its calm presence grounded him, reminding him again that patience, observation, and gentle persistence were more powerful than haste or recklessness. The woman motioned for him to mount, and they continued along the path beside the stream, moving with deliberate care. The sun dipped lower, casting a warm amber glow across the hills and fields. Each step, each careful movement, seemed to echo the lessons the valley had been teaching. Life unfolds in measured rhythms, and those who move with awareness and attention find guidance even in the most uncertain terrain. The hills stretched onward, rolling like gentle waves beneath the warm light of the late afternoon sun. The path narrowed slightly, winding between tufts of tall grasses and clusters of wildflowers that bent with the soft breeze. Aldrich guided the horse with careful patience, feeling every subtle shift in the slope beneath the hooves. The rhythmic motion of each step blended with the distant murmur of the stream and the soft rustle of grasses, creating a slow, steady cadence that seemed to pulse in harmony with the valley itself. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tips of the grass, her eyes tracing patterns in the landscape. She paused to touch a sun-warmed stone, letting her fingers linger on the rough surface. "The land speaks if you listen," she said softly. "Even the smallest details reveal guidance. Step with awareness, and the world opens its path to you." A breeze stirred the fields, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers, earth, and the distant river. Aldrich inhaled deeply, letting the calm of the hills settle into him. Every movement his own, the horses, and the subtle swaying of the grasses became part of the valley's enduring rhythm. He realized anew that patience and attentiveness shaped the journey more than force or speed ever could. A hawk rose from a distant copse of trees, wings outstretched, gliding effortlessly on the currents of wind. Aldrich watched it, noting the deliberate grace of its flight. Even in the air, the woman said softly, movement follows rhythm. Awareness guides the hawk safely, as it will guide us. The horse shifted beneath him, grazing slowly at the edge of the path. Aldrich ran his fingers along its neck, feeling the warmth and steady pulse beneath his touch. The calm, patient presence of the animal reminded him that endurance, quiet observation, and deliberate steps were the true strengths in any journey. Ahead, the path curved toward a small cluster of trees that marked the entrance to a gentle valley below. Sunlight poured through the canopy, creating pools of warmth that danced across the ground. Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze as he approached the edge, kneeling to touch the cool grass. The valley below shimmered in the soft light, dotted with wildflowers, and the gentle gleam of the river winding through it. The woman stood beside him, her gaze sweeping across the valley. "The path will descend now," she said softly. "Step carefully. Observe. Let patience guide you. Even when the slope seems steep, awareness and careful attention will carry you safely." Aldrich mounted once more, guiding the horse with deliberate care as they began the descent. Every hoofstep, every subtle sway, every breath became a part of the valley's slow, steady cadence. The sun lowered in the sky, painting the hills and valley in shades of amber and gold. Each movement forward carried not just them, but the lessons of patience, observation, and gentle persistence embedded deeply within them, guiding each step toward the unfolding journey ahead. The slope into the valley was gentle yet deliberate, each step of the horse pressing softly into the earth, sending small echoes through the soil. Aldrich guided it carefully, feeling the subtle give of the ground beneath him. Sunlight streamed through scattered clouds, casting warm, shifting patterns across the landscape. The distant river glittered like a silver thread, winding steadily through the valley below, a quiet reminder of life's patient persistence. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tall grasses, fingers occasionally tracing the edges of flowers or stones. "Even as we descend," she said softly, "the rhythm of life continues. Observe the valley's patterns. Let them guide your steps without haste. Awareness is our compass when the way seems uncertain." A gentle breeze stirred the grasses, carrying with it the faint scent of earth, wildflowers, and the distant river. Aldrich inhaled deeply, feeling a calm, steady pulse settle into him, syncing with the horse's careful steps. Every motion the horse's his own, and even the soft sway of grass and leaves blended into the valley's enduring cadence, a slow rhythm that seemed to whisper guidance with each step. A pair of deer appeared at the edge of the slope, stepping gracefully over the grass, pausing to lift their heads and observe before continuing. Aldrich watched, noticing the careful balance of caution and movement. Life here moved deliberately, aware of every sound, every motion, yet flowed steadily forward without hurry. The horse shifted beneath him, nudging gently as if sensing his own attentiveness. Aldrich ran his hand along its neck, feeling the warmth and quiet steadiness beneath him. The animal embodied the valley's lessons. Patience, observation, and gentle persistence carried more weight than speed or force ever could. The woman paused at a small outcropping of rocks near the descent, her hand resting lightly on the sun-warmed stone. "The smallest details hold guidance," she whispered. "Watch, listen, and move deliberately. Even when the path curves or the slope steepens, awareness carries us safely forward." Aldrich dismounted briefly, letting the horse graze while he observed the valley below. Sunlight painted the river in glittering strokes. Wildflowers swayed in harmony with the gentle wind, and distant birds glided with effortless grace. Every detail, the shimmer of water, the curve of the land, the sway of grasses, was part of a steady, unhurried rhythm, teaching him patience, care, and attentive movement. Mounting once more, Aldrich led the horse down the gentle slope, following the woman's steady pace. Each step was measured, deliberate, and attuned to the subtle pulses of life around them. The warm afternoon light bathed the valley in amber tones, and the steady murmur of the river below wove itself into the quiet cadence that carried them onward, deeper into the journey that lay ahead. The valley opened fully before them now, a vast expanse of green and gold, dotted with clusters of trees and the winding silver of the river catching the fading sunlight. Aldrich guided the horse slowly across the gentle slope, each step measured, attentive to the soft undulations of the earth. The air was warm, carrying the mingled scent of grasses, wildflowers, and the faint temps of the river. Every inhalation felt grounding, a steadying rhythm that synced with the horse's patient steps. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing the tall grasses. She paused occasionally, letting her fingers trace the curve of a flower stem or the edge of a sun-warmed stone. "The valley teaches through observation," she said softly. "Even in its vastness, every detail matters. Awareness guides us when the path seems to open, too expansive to navigate without thought." A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the faint hum of insects and the distant calls of birds. Aldrich felt the calm of the valley settle into him, a soft rhythm that pulsed through the land and through him, weaving together the lessons of forest, stream, ridge, and hill. Every sound, every sway of grass, every glint of sunlight reflected a quiet persistence, a patient endurance that had guided them thus far. A herd of deer grazed in a distant meadow, moving slowly and deliberately. Aldrich watched them, noticing how each movement was balanced and purposeful, guided by attentiveness rather than speed. The horse shifted beneath him, nudging gently, its warmth and steady pulse a comforting reminder that persistence and patience were themselves a form of strength. The woman paused beside a small copse of trees, letting her gaze sweep across the valley. "Even in openness," she said softly, "there are patterns. Rivers bend, trees cluster, life moves in subtle rhythms. Notice them, step in harmony with them, and the way forward becomes clear." Aldrich dismounted briefly, letting the horse graze as he knelt near a patch of wildflowers. The warm sunlight highlighted every petal, every blade of grass, every small stone in the earth. He let his fingers trace their contours, feeling the pulse of the valley in the tiniest details. Even in vast open spaces, patience, care, and gentle attention revealed guidance in ways that force or haste could never achieve. Mounting again, Aldrich followed the woman as they moved across the valley floor. Each step was deliberate, each motion attuned to the subtle rhythm of the land, the horse, and the gentle pulse of life around them. The sunlight softened as it dipped lower, casting long, warm shadows across the fields. Every detail, the shimmer of river water, the sway of grasses, the distant flight of birds, wove together into a quiet, steady cadence, carrying them onward toward the next chapter of their journey. The valley floor stretched wide and open now, dotted with clusters of wildflowers swaying in the gentle evening breeze. The air was cooler, carrying the faint scent of river water and sun-warmed grass, mingled with the earthy aroma of distant soil and moss. Aldrich guided the horse slowly, each step deliberate, feeling the soft undulations of the ground beneath the hooves. Every motion, every careful movement, became part of the valley's unhurried rhythm. The woman walked beside him, letting her fingers trail along the tips of tall grasses and the edges of wildflowers. "Even in open space," she said softly, "there is guidance to be found. Observation brings clarity, and patience ensures the path is followed safely. Haste only obscures the way." A gentle breeze stirred the air, causing the grasses to ripple like waves across the land. Aldrich inhaled deeply, letting the slow cadence of the valley settle within him. The river murmured faintly in the distance, a soft, persistent sound that harmonized with the whispers of leaves and the gentle swish of the horse's movements. The world felt alive, steady, and reassuring in its quiet continuity. A flock of birds rose suddenly from a nearby grove, wings glinting in the fading sunlight as they wheeled through the sky. Aldrich watched them, noting the fluidity of their motion, the precision of their flight. Life moved with purpose here, measured and careful, even in moments of apparent ease. The horse shifted beneath him, steady and calm, its warmth and pulse grounding him in the present moment. The woman paused near a cluster of stones at the edge of the valley, letting her gaze sweep over the fields. "Notice the subtle signs," she whispered. "How the river bends, how the grass leans with the wind, how the light changes with the day. Awareness guides the steps forward. Patience sustains them." Aldrich dismounted and knelt by a patch of soft earth, running his fingers through the cool soil. He felt the texture of the land, the subtle vibrations beneath, the quiet hum of life hidden among the grass. Even in this wide open space, every detail offered guidance, if observed with care. Patience, observation, and gentle persistence became not just lessons, but companions on the path ahead. Mounting once more, Aldrich followed the woman as they continued across the valley floor. Each step was intentional, attuned to the subtle movements and rhythms of the land. The sun dipped lower, painting the fields in warm amber and gold, casting long, soft shadows across the grasses. The gentle pulse of the valley carried them onward, steady, deliberate, and full of quiet strength, guiding them toward the unknown yet ever-watchful horizon. The sun had begun its slow descent, painting the valley in hues of amber and rose. Shadows stretched long across the grasses, and the soft murmur of the river below grew more pronounced in the cooling air. Aldrich guided the horse steadily, each step deliberate, feeling the slight unevenness of the earth beneath its hooves, the gentle sway of the tall grasses, and the distant rustle of leaves harmonized with the horse's rhythm, creating a soothing, meditative cadence. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing lightly against the wildflowers that dotted the valley floor. She paused occasionally, letting her fingers trace the delicate curves of petals or the edge of a smooth stone. "Even as daylight wanes," she said softly, "awareness is our lantern. Patience carries us safely, even when shadows lengthen and the path becomes less clear." A soft breeze carried the earthy scent of the river, mingled with the sweet fragrance of wildflowers. Aldrich inhaled deeply, feeling the warmth of the sun lingering on his skin while the cool air brushed his cheeks. Every movement, the horse's steady steps, the whisper of grass, the distant calls of birds settling for the night, formed a quiet, enduring rhythm that guided their journey. In the distance, a fox moved gracefully through a cluster of reeds, pausing to observe them before slipping silently into shadow. Aldrich noted the deliberate care in its motion, the same careful attentiveness that the woman had been teaching him all along. Strength and safety here, he realized, came not from haste or force, but from measured, mindful action. The horse shifted beneath him, and Aldrich ran his hand along its warm neck, feeling its steady pulse. The animal's calm presence mirrored the lessons of the valley. Persistence, patience, and awareness were the quiet powers that carried one forward. The woman led them toward a small rise in the valley, where the fading sunlight glinted on scattered stones and the tips of grasses. She stopped briefly, gazing across the stretch of land below. Every hill, every curve, every detail shapes the way ahead, she said softly. Attend carefully, move deliberately, and the path will guide you. Aldrich dismounted and let the horse graze while he knelt to touch the cool earth at the crest of the rise. The amber light of the evening highlighted every detail: the shimmer of the river, the gentle sway of grass, the shadows creeping across the valley floor. Each element seemed to pulse in harmony with life itself, a slow, deliberate cadence that settled deep within him. Mounting once more, Aldrich followed the woman as they began their descent toward the river's edge. Each step was measured, mindful, and attuned to the subtle rhythms of the land around them. The valley, alive in every sound, scent, and movement, guided them onward, steady and unhurried, carrying the quiet strength of patience and attentive observation into the approaching dusk. The valley grew cooler as the sun dipped lower, casting a soft, amber glow over the river and the surrounding fields. Aldrich guided the horse carefully along the gentle slope toward the water's edge, feeling the firm yet yielding earth beneath its hooves. Each movement was deliberate, attuned to the rhythm of the land, the soft whisper of wind through the grasses, and the quiet hum of life settling in for the evening. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing lightly against the tall wildflowers. She paused to touch a stone warmed by the sun, letting her fingers linger as if listening to the land itself. Even as light fades, she said softly, "Patience and awareness remain our guiding lanterns. Haste can blind us. Care reveals the path." A heron rose gracefully from the riverbank, wings outstretched, gliding silently above the water. Aldrich watched, captivated by the effortless precision of its flight, the slow, deliberate sweep of its wings. In its motion, he saw a reflection of the lesson the woman had been imparting. Even in moments that seem fleeting or small, purpose and careful attention carry enduring weight. The horse shifted beneath him, nudging gently as if aware of his reflection on the heron. Aldrich ran his hand along its neck, feeling the steady warmth and quiet pulse beneath his fingers. Strength, he realized, was not always in the forceful act, but in the calm endurance and measured patience that carried them steadily forward. The woman led them toward a small grove along the river's edge, where the air was rich with the scent of damp earth and moss. The sunlight glimmered on the water, casting shimmering reflections onto the leaves above. Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze as he approached the riverbank. He knelt, letting the cool water slip over his hands, watching as it carried tiny leaves and petals downstream, each ripple deliberate, patient, and persistent. The woman's gaze swept across the river and the distant fields. "Even in movement, there is calm," she said softly. "The water flows, yet it does not rush. Life moves forward steadily when guided by awareness and care. Step with patience, and you will never be lost." Aldrich breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of the valley, the river's soft murmur, the swaying of grasses. The distant call of settling birds embed itself within him. Mounting once more, he followed the woman as they moved along the river's edge. Each step became a part of the valley's enduring cadence, measured, deliberate, and attuned to the gentle pulse of the world around them. The evening deepened, painting the fields and river in soft shades of gold and rose. Every movement forward carried not just them, but the quiet lessons of patience, observation, and gentle persistence, flowing steadily toward the unknown yet ever-guiding horizon. Twilight settled softly over the valley, wrapping the landscape in a gentle, rosy glow. The air had cooled, carrying the subtle scent of damp earth, river water, and the lingering warmth of sun-soaked grass. Aldrich guided the horse slowly along the riverbank, each hoofstep deliberate, attentive to the soft shifts of earth beneath. The rhythm of their movement blended seamlessly with the gentle murmur of the river and the whisper of wind through the grasses. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing lightly against the tall grasses. She paused occasionally, letting her fingertips graze moss-covered stones or brush the edges of wildflowers that glimmered in the fading light. "Even as darkness approaches," she said softly, "patience and careful observation are our guides. Do not rush. The valley speaks clearly if we listen." A kingfisher darted across the river, its wings flashing brilliant hues of blue and green in the twilight. Aldrich watched its movements, noticing the careful precision in every beat of its wings, the deliberate arcs as it hovered briefly before diving. In that fleeting motion, he saw a reflection of the quiet lessons he had been learning. Strength was found in attentiveness, and even small actions could leave a lasting impact. The horse shifted beneath him, nudging gently as if to reassure him. Aldrich ran his hand along its warm neck, feeling the steady pulse beneath his fingers. Its calm presence mirrored the valley's rhythm, teaching that endurance and care were stronger than haste or force. The woman led them to a slight rise along the riverbank, where the water widened and reflected the pink and gold sky like a liquid mirror. She paused, letting her gaze sweep over the valley below. "Notice the subtle changes," she whispered. "Light shifts, water moves, grass sways. Every detail carries guidance, if you are attentive enough to see it." Aldrich dismounted and knelt beside the river, letting the cool water flow over his hands. Tiny ripples carried leaves and petals downstream, each movement patient and deliberate. He felt the valley's quiet pulse, the murmur of water, the whisper of wind. The distant call of settling birds settled deep within him, grounding him in the present moment. Mounting again, Aldrich followed the woman as they continued along the riverbank. Each step was slow, mindful, and attuned to the gentle rhythms of the valley. The evening deepened, soft shadows stretching across the grasses, the river shimmering in muted gold and rose. Every detail, every careful movement, every deliberate breath became part of the valley's steady cadence, guiding them onward toward the approaching night and the mysteries yet to unfold. Nightfall began to settle over the valley, the sky deepening into soft shades of indigo and violet. Stars appeared, faint at first, then gradually brighter, scattered across the heavens like tiny lanterns guiding the way. The air had cooled further, carrying the crisp scent of river water, damp earth, and the faint perfume of night-blooming flowers. Aldrich guided the horse carefully along the riverbank, every hoofstep measured, each motion deliberate, as the world around them slowed into a hushed, peaceful rhythm. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing lightly against the dew-kissed grass. She paused occasionally, letting her fingers touch smooth stones or the petals of flowers that glimmered softly in the moonlight. Even in darkness, she whispered, "There is guidance." Observation and patience light the path more clearly than haste ever could. A heron perched at the water's edge, its white feathers luminous in the silvery glow of moonlight. It remained perfectly still, watching, alert, yet calm. Aldrich studied its poised balance, noting the quiet strength and careful attentiveness in its stance. The lesson was clear: even when the night obscures the path, awareness and measured care carry one safely forward. The horse shifted beneath him, its warm body a comforting presence in the cooling night. Aldrich ran a hand along its neck, feeling the steady pulse beneath his fingers, a grounding rhythm in the soft hush of the valley. Its calm patience reminded him that endurance and gentle persistence often held more power than force or haste. The woman paused at a gentle rise along the riverbank, gazing across the shimmering water. "Notice the reflections," she said softly. "The moonlight dances on the ripples, the grasses sway in gentle patterns, and even in darkness, the land communicates its lessons. Attentive steps carry you safely, even when the path is uncertain." Aldrich dismounted briefly, letting the horse graze. He knelt beside the river, cupping the cool, flowing water in his hands, watching as the current carried leaves and petals downstream. Each ripple was slow, deliberate, patient, a mirror of the enduring rhythm that had guided them through forest, ridge, and field. Mounting again, Aldrich followed the woman along the riverbank. The moonlight bathed the valley in a soft silvery glow, illuminating the careful steps of horse and rider, the gentle sway of grasses, and the shimmering river. Each movement, each breath, each deliberate step was attuned to the quiet, steady cadence of the night, carrying them forward into the deep calm of evening, prepared for whatever lay ahead. The night had fully settled over the valley now, a soft blanket of indigo and silver. Stars shimmered overhead, scattered like tiny lanterns, and the moon cast a gentle, luminous glow across the river and fields. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the subtle sense of water, earth, and night-blooming flowers. Aldrich guided the horse slowly along the riverbank, each hoofstep deliberate and measured, every motion in quiet harmony with the gentle rhythm of the world around him. The woman walked beside him, her cloak brushing softly against the grass, her gaze sweeping across the moonlit valley. She paused occasionally, letting her fingers touch the dew-kissed blades of grass or the smooth stones along the river's edge. Even at journey's end, she whispered, "Patience, awareness, and gentle persistence remain our guides. Every step, every breath has carried us here, and they will continue to carry us beyond." A family of deer emerged quietly from the shadows, moving gracefully through the silvered grass. Aldrich watched them, noting the deliberate care in their movements, the balance between caution and forward motion. Life in the valley flowed steadily, persistently, and he felt its rhythm echoing in his own pulse, guiding him, grounding him, teaching him to move with care and confidence. The horse shifted beneath him, warm and steady, and Aldrich ran his hand along its neck, feeling the quiet reassurance in its measured heartbeat. The lessons of the journey, the forests, the ridges, the streams, the open fields, and the flowing river had been embedded in every motion, every observation, every moment of patient attention. Strength was in persistence, guidance was in awareness, and the smallest, most deliberate actions shaped the way forward. The woman paused near the river's edge, gazing at the moonlight shimmering on the water. "We have come far," she said softly, "but the journey does not end here. Remember what you have learned. Patience, careful observation, and gentle persistence are the quiet powers that will carry you through every challenge." Aldrich dismounted, letting the horse graze freely while he knelt by the river. He dipped his hands into the cool, flowing water, watching leaves drift gently downstream, each ripple slow, deliberate, and persistent. The river, the valley, the night, all of it seemed to whisper that even in darkness, the careful, attentive steps of the journey had meaning and purpose. Finally, Aldrich mounted again, following the woman as they moved slowly along the riverbank under the silvery glow of the moon. The night was calm, the world at peace, and each step became part of the enduring rhythm of the valley. The journey had taught them patience, care, and quiet strength, the tools they would carry forward into the unknown. And now, as the valley rests under moonlight and the stars shimmer softly above, it is time for you, dear listener, to rest as well. Let the gentle pulse of this story, the river's murmur, the sway of the grass, the calm endurance of horse and rider settle around you. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and allow the lessons of patience, observation, and gentle persistence to guide you into your own peaceful journey through sleep. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Share where you are listening from, whether the US, Europe, Canada, or anywhere else. Sound what time it is as the valley whispers its quiet calm to you. Good night, and may your dreams carry you steadily forward, as the horse, the river, and the valley have carried our travelers tonight.